Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Saturday morning for our Early Memory Loss Conference. My name is Cassandra Rivera, and I'm the Senior Care Counselor here at Alzheimer's of Los Angeles. For those of you who don't know, the month of June is actually Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. So what better way to kick off June 1st with us here today? Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our President and CEO, Heather Ortner, to share some opening remarks.
Thank you, Cassandra. Good morning, everyone. It is so lovely to see so many people here this morning. I applaud you all for taking some time out of your, I'm sure, very busy weekends to spend some time online with us. A very special thank you to get us started to the amazing Alzheimer's Los Angeles staff and all of our speakers who you will hear from. The staff has worked so hard to make this all go so smoothly, and our speakers are truly experts and truly wonderful people, and they give their time to us this morning to help inform you and help you understand where things are for you and what choices you have to move forward. Many, many special thanks to Cassandra, who you just met and heard from, our Senior Care Counselor for Early Stage Programs, who is moderating our program today, and Xiomara Lara, our other care counselor for our other care counselor for early stage programs. Also a special thank you to Carmine Tawagan, who is our amazing development manager and worked really hard behind the scenes with Cassandra and Xiomara over the last few months to make everything happen today seamlessly and to come off without a hitch. I'd like to acknowledge the support and generosity of a couple of our really important sponsors who provided funding. First of all, to Elliot and Marcia Sainer, who have long supported this program, as well as to Eli Lilly for providing some sponsorship money for this event also. I want to also take a moment and express our real gratitude to so many of you who chose to, as you were signing up for today, make a donation. And between all of you so far, you have collectively contributed almost $2,000. That is not insignificant. It is very meaningful, and we are so grateful for your support of the work that we do. Alzheimer's Los Angeles has long recognized that people who are dealing with memory concerns may feel alone, frustrated, or frightened. This conference today, which you are here for, was designed after years of experience listening and learning from the advice of people with memory loss and early stage dementia. Our first early memory loss conference was held in 2007, and we've evolved over the years, developed and refined our models of care to meet the needs of people with memory loss and their care partners. Today, we're excited to bring this important event to you virtually. And while we aren't together in person, I am certain that you will find the experience enriching and rewarding. And we know that many of you actually prefer to join from the comfort of your own home. And I hope that you have a nice cup of coffee or tea or something, to keep you cozy on this overcast. But I'm sure it'll burn off and be a beautiful day later after the conference ends. Throughout the day, you're going to hear about so many resources available to you. And I hope you'll consider reaching out to us if you are interested in our special groups for people with early stage Alzheimer's or another dementia, or connecting with our care counselors, Cassandra and Xiomara. Please also consider joining a future session of our Memory Club, an award-winning program. It's designed to provide information and support in a safe, supportive environment tailored for people with early stage Alzheimer's and their care partners. Many people who've participated in our programs have said that they are life-changing. I truly hope that you find all the information that you received today helpful and informative. It is a special program. We get remarkably positive reviews of it every single time. Take advantage of the information on the slide that you're seeing on your screen. And at this point, I'm going to step back and let the actual program begin and hand everything back off to the wonderful Cassandra. Good morning, Cassandra, and thank you.
Good morning, Heather. Thank you so much. As Heather said, we have a great program prepared for you today. I hope this gives you some insight and an idea about what our groups feel like. All of our groups are held via Zoom, and so today we're going to kick off the day with the ins and outs of estate planning and elder law. This presentation will be by Rebecca Goldfarb. She's an elder law attorney at Goldfarb and Lew. During our presentation, we'd like to ask you to send questions to our Q&A box. Please do not put any questions in the chat at this time, and remember, the questions will be public. So be mindful of anything that you'll be sharing. All of our participants will be able to see. I'd like to also share Rebecca is an experienced, compassionate, and detailed-oriented planner who provides peace of mind for her clients by creating comprehensive estate plans and updating them when needed. Um, Rebecca's been a longtime advocate and partner here at our agency. I personally love to hear her presentations because she presents in a way that is a lot of difficult and information and hard to understand, but in a way that makes it easy to comprehend. And also, she does it with just such care and compassion, and she makes every client feel like they're a part of her family. And she's so passionate about her work. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Rebecca Goldfarb.
Good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. And I think my presentation is going to come up. Let me move the chat box. And I'll just say next every time the slide should move. So Alzheimer's, as some of you may have heard, is dear to my heart. I get teary-eyed sometimes when I talk about it, but my grandpa had Alzheimer's, and I see the impact of Alzheimer's LA with clients and their families now compared to what we had when my grandpa had Alzheimer's in the late 80s and early 90s with zero support. So thank you, a huge hug and lots of applause for Alzheimer's LA. Next. Oh, I already said that. A roadmap for today. So first and foremost, I'm going to teach you something new. I promise every single one of you will learn 1 or 100 new things or somewhere in between. And I want to talk about estate planning 101 and the fatal flaws we see in plans. And this will help you when you're developing your plans or updating your plans to really think about maybe estate planning in a new way. And you will get this slide deck at some point later emailed to you, so you don't have to feel like you have to write everything down, but just take notes when you can for things that are really relevant to you. And then also, obviously, I want to talk about what is elder law. And then there's tons of action items and checklists. I have lots of resources. I'm here to answer all of your questions as they come up in the chat. People will tell me when to answer those questions because I can't see them right now. So next. So as we're always told when we fly an airplane, you have to put your own oxygen mask on first. Next. I think people don't realize, at least a lot of the people I talk to, almost everyone, so don't feel bad if you fall into this category, they don't understand what the purpose of an estate plan is. So together, it's a bunch of different documents that should first honor your wishes. Sometimes we have to dive deep to figure out what some of our clients' wishes are. Also to avoid court, and most importantly, in the end, to maintain family harmony. Next. The sad part is about 99%, so almost all of the estate plans that we see have a fatal flaw in one of these areas. Next. So estate planning 101, this is a big overview, and then I'm going to dive deeper into each of the topics. So your advanced healthcare directive is the document that does 2 things. 1, it names who can make medical decisions for you. And 2, it should name what all of the wishes are that you have. It should state those. And this is when you become unable to make those decisions yourself. That's when this should kick in. The next one is the durable power of attorney. So this is similar when you're not able to make decisions, but it's only for legal and financial decisions. Next. So if you're over 18, you have to have these 2 documents. This is not something you create only when you need it. Once you need it, it's too late to create it. So once you turn 18, so it's for everyone here, I'm sure is over 18, but you'll have family members that who are almost 18 or 18 or in their early 20s. This is for every single person. It has nothing to do with your assets. It's just a matter of turning 18. Then nobody has legal authority to make decisions. Even if you're married, even if you're the parent, you have to get these early on. Next. So if you have assets or you have kids or you have grandkids or you want to sprinkle assets over time because people aren't good with money or they're on public benefits, then you need a trust. So a trust holds your assets and can sprinkle them over time at your direction. Every estate plan that includes a trust also includes what's called a pour-over will. This is a safety net that is up to 180,000, 184,500 outside of a trust. This will pour those assets into the trust. Now, if you don't need a trust at all because you don't have a lot of assets or you don't have kids or grandkids and you want to leave whatever it is outright, maybe you only need a will, but a comprehensive plan has all of those. Next. So the myth, that I'll have myths scattered throughout this. And the myth is, oh, my family will just handle things automatically. Well, it doesn't happen that way without these documents. Next. So I just have a question, but I can't really see, so I don't know how that works. But just for you to know, how many people have an estate plan? And I'm hoping, oh, you do have a poll. Perfect. How many people have an estate plan? And then next, have you updated it in the last 3 to 5 years? I don't get to vote, but I would vote yes if I had it, if I was able to. Okay, whenever the polls close, then we'll get to see the results. So I'll just wait for you guys to do that. I'll have a sip of water. Okay, so 68% of you have an estate plan. I am so impressed. And 44% of you have updated it. You are doing awesome. So for those of you who don't fit into that category, it's probably time to start thinking about these things. And for those of you who have done all of this, then really just hear the fine tuning that might be done in your estate plan with your attorney. Okay, next. So the problem that we discover in our work is that either people don't have a plan or it doesn't work when they need it. Next. So some of the problems are we see documents that are outdated, right? If you've updated them recently, that's not going to be the case, but a lot of people haven't updated them in a while. We'll see missing documents. So when I laid out those 4 main documents, they have to have all of those, assuming that a trust is warranted. And then there's some ancillary ones, but we even see estate plans where there's a trust, but no pour over will, or there's an advance directive, but no power of attorney. So it's really important to have a comprehensive set of documents. They do very different things. Sometimes, unfortunately, and this is the hard part for people who aren't lawyers reading this, or even if you're a lawyer, but you're not an estate planning lawyer, if the documents are confusing, you don't want multiple people having different understandings of what the documents say. So things have to be very clearly written. We see that trusts are not funded a lot. So I'm going to talk about this several times throughout the presentation, but essentially what it means is that your documents aren't, your assets haven't been transferred into your trust. So it's not about what the trust says, it's about the ownership of each asset. So I'll go through that a little bit more later. Sometimes we see the wrong people are in charge. Maybe it's people you're not close to anymore. Maybe it's people who aren't really good at that job. Maybe it's people who have moved far away and it's going to make it harder for them, specifically with the advance directive. I have so many stories, and if I had an hour and 15 minutes, I would share lots of stories, but I have to hustle through these slides. So we have time for some questions. And then some people do this without proper counsel, either because they think they can do it online, which is not the best choice, or because they feel like they go to an attorney, but maybe this isn't what the attorney specializes in. And so everything isn't filled out and thought through comprehensively. Next. So the solution is you have to pick the right law firm. They need to empower you and collaborate with you to create a plan together. Our job as the attorney is to teach you all of the ins and outs, and then your job is to pick the right people, and we work through it. And sometimes in these meetings, even though clients have thought through this or created these documents in the past, they end up changing who they think is right based on the education and the discussions we have. You should have a lifelong relationship with your estate planning attorney because things do change, people change, wishes change, assets change, and the laws change. Next. So what if you become incapacitated? So this means that mentally you're not able to make these sorts of decisions anymore. Next. So these are the fatal flaws. I used to go into all the ins and outs of like what we do, but that didn't help people as much. So that first part of the slide that you see is like this whole navigation of discussions that we have. But what we often see is that people have picked the wrong agents. The person who's making medical decisions, in my opinion, should be someone who first and foremost will put their own wishes and desires aside to honor yours. And this is very, very important once Alzheimer's is a part of our lives, because oftentimes the people closest to us cannot put their wishes aside to honor ours. It's a really hard part of the process. I was talking last night with a family for about an hour and a half, talking through these end stages of Alzheimer's and the decisions that they have to make. And it's excruciatingly difficult sometimes. So you want to make sure you're picking the right person. Springing powers, this is something that affects both the advance directive and the power of attorney. And all it means is that even though you've signed the document and notarized it or witnessed it, and it's legally effective, the authority of the agent, the person making these decisions for you, doesn't go into action until one or sometimes two, whatever the document says, doctors deem you incapacitated. We are finding more and more doctors don't want to get involved in our legal process. And so it's very time consuming or expensive when you need to pay an expert. And also it makes your loved one have to go through all, this battery of tests. And so if you make them immediately effective versus based on when a doctor deems you incapacitated, then your agent can seamlessly step in. And it's just overall easier for everyone, but that means you're picking the right people. So it's very important, that first part, picking the right agents. We see advanced directives that don't have the HIPAA waivers or the language that's necessary for the medical community to tell your agent or tell other loved ones what's going on. So it's impossible to make decisions if you don't know what's going on. And sometimes it's really helpful that other people can call the hospital or call the community where you live and speak and know what's going on. Now, those people don't necessarily make the decisions. They're not always your agents, but they should be a HIPAA waiver with the right people on there. We see insufficient details in this advance directive all the time. I've never seen an advance directive that has enough detail for me. And then a POLST is the physician's orders for life-sustaining treatment. So I'll have a slide on that, but essentially that's the DNR that if you want a DNR, do not resuscitate, you need to have a POLST. Next. So this is the post where it says, I'm going to say next because I think the slide just has arrows. Yeah. So if you do not want you do not want CPR, then you're going to say do not attempt CPR in that first box A. In the second box B, you can't pick full treatment then, and you're either picking selective treatment or comfort. And the big difference is that with comfort, you're not going to treat with IV antibiotics if you get pneumonia or a UTI or a bed sore that gets infected. You're going to treat for comfort only. Next. So fatal flaws of the power of attorney, same thing, wrong agents. In this case, we really don't recommend having co-agents, having two people do it together, because a lot of the financial institutions, more and more of them are not accepting that co-agency. So we like one and then the other. Springing power is the exact same thing. In California, and I don't know about other states, but in California, you're not allowed to give gifts, which is a legal term of art that could be very important, or access separate property of a spouse for your own benefit in some way that could also be important. You're not allowed to do that unless the document specifically states it. So it's important to talk through those issues with your attorney. And then logins and passwords. We all have these logins and passwords and this two-factor authentication and security questions. It drives me crazy. It's really important to write all of these down, because without that list, it's virtually impossible for your loved one to get into these accounts and help you with bill paying and accessing information. And then remember, each financial institution has their own power of attorney. So even though we create one, each financial institution has their own. So essentially what that means is you're going to them, you're presenting this power of attorney. If somebody's already lost capacity, they're going to send it to their legal department. It's going to take a couple weeks. You're going to have to follow up 200 times probably. And then you will get the power there, as long as they approve the power of attorney. Alternatively, if you're okay, you just go in and create the power of attorney at the financial institution now, and then you don't need to use the attorney drafted one. Okay, next. So what happens after you pass away? And, you know, I was just on 2 different calls yesterday with people who said, my family was the closest family in the entire universe until so-and-so passed away, and if there was any money at stake, and now there's this family feud. And both of the families yesterday were like, if you had asked me 5 years ago, it was inconceivable that this could happen. And one of them I've known for that long, and it was inconceivable to me that that could happen. And so one person after our phone call texted me and said, I wish everybody believed you when they said this could never happen. And I said, it might. You want to make sure this is all really laid out clearly. So next. So whether you need a will or a trust is dependent upon your assets and your goals. So if you have under 184,500 and you have accurate beneficiary designations, or even if you have more than that, but you have accurate beneficiary designations and you have no real estate and no businesses, and you want to give everything outright when you pass away, and there's no minor kids, then a will might suffice. Some of these financial institutions merge, think of TD and Ameritrade and Schwab, and I am sure not every beneficiary designation got transferred. So it's really important to keep those handy. Don't rely on the institution. But if you have a real estate, if you want to give over time, or you have kids or grandkids or anyone with special needs, then it's really important to have a trust. Next. So I could spend a really long time on this slide, but I don't have time today. So it's critical that your funding be done correctly. This is when we marshal the assets, we come up with a list. You know if the trust owns it, you know if it's in your name as an individual, you know You know, a lot of people, and maybe you're included, want to name a spouse or name an adult child on an account with you or on a deed with you. Please don't do that. If I had more time, I would go over this. If you have questions about it, I will answer them. If you have questions about it after the fact and you want to reach out to me, I'll answer them then. I just don't have time today, but it is one of my most important slides. All right, next. Okay, so what is probate? Probate is the process where you don't have a trust or you have assets that exceed that 184,500 outside of the trust. So you have no will or what I just described, or a will. You have over that 184 and a half, as I mentioned. There's no beneficiaries or transfer on deaths, and then it's going to lead to probate. So it's a public process. The judge is determining if there's a valid will. You have to have the original will, and then the judge will determine if it's valid. If it's not, or you don't have one, then the law of intestacy will take over. This will be your next of kin. So a couple of weeks ago, we were working with someone. Long story short, she became non-responsive and passed away exceptionally fast, faster than any of us expected. There were between her and her husband 4 nieces and nephews. And unfortunately, because we weren't able to do this, only the niece and nephew of the last person who passed away is going to receive, and the other people aren't going to get anything. And while everyone was on the same page in this meeting, 2 days later after she passed away, the one niece and nephew were not on the same page anymore and went off on their own to do this and probably are not going to share. And that is very sad for this family. So the judge names an executor. You have to have good credit and maybe some income. You need a bond usually, unless a will waives a bond. It's very expensive. I'll show you in the next slide. Assets are frozen for months. So if assets are only in one spouse's name, this could be very difficult. We have to notify creditors. So they all come out, obviously, most always. And otherwise in a trust, it's private, so they might not. It takes 1 to 2 years to get through a probate. Next. This is what probate costs. These are the minimum statutory fees. So if you have an estate, let's say it's 700,000. If you have a home and you have a mortgage, you do not get to deduct the mortgage. It's just fair market value. So let's say 700,000 minimum probate fees, 34,000. If you have a trust, you have no probate fees. That's funded correctly. And it just keeps going up and up and up and up. My law partner told me the other day that one of her colleague friends is tangentially related to a probate, and the person who died had $2 billion and no trust. So you can imagine what those probate fees are. Next. So the way to avoid it is to get a trust, make sure it's well written, make sure the assets are funded, transferred into the trust, and that you've picked the right people. And I am a huge advocate of giving back. So be sure that if Alzheimer's LA is near and dear to your heart, as they are to mine, that you leave them a gift in your trust. Next. So fatal flaws in trust that we see, either the wrong successor trustees or co-trustees, like I mentioned with the power of attorney, same concept. The funding is incomplete. This is almost all of the time. I don't know that maybe in the last 5 years, there's been one client where the funding has been complete when they came to us to review a plan. The documents are ambiguous. Unfortunately, we see that far too often. And we see a lot of financial elder abuse. We get several calls every week about financial elder abuse. So that goes back to that marshaling the assets, who has access to that money. If it's a married couple and the trust was done for sure a long time ago, but even more recently, lawyers make these assumptions for clients to create these AB mandatory split trusts. This is not what 99% of the people want. So if you have one, you probably want to talk to your lawyer about getting rid of that. Again, I wish I had more time to talk in more detail about these things. The trust protector is a fairly new concept in the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, where it's a third-party neutral who will be the judge over your trust if anything goes wrong. So we really don't ever have to go to court, which is lovely. And then we're big animal people, so you want to make sure there's someone in there to take care of your pets. And if it's not someone really close to you, be sure you leave some money to take care of your pets. Next. So trust administration. Essentially, when it's easy, it takes about 6 months to 12 months-ish. So the trustee was the right person. We figure out the assets, we pay the debts and the taxes, we do the distribution, and we have family harmony. The other way is a nightmare. If the trustee is the wrong person or there's no one who's able to serve, we have to go to court. Sometimes when the funding isn't done, we either have to petition the court for this, what's called the Hegstead petition, or a full probate. Then we get to the debts, taxes, and distribution, and then in the end, people don't speak. Next. So the best gift you can give is a regularly updated estate plan. Next. Now, caregiver burnout is extraordinarily important. It takes a village to care for someone, no matter what the situation is. We all need help. And so there are lots of people out there, your family, your friends, your neighbors who will help. If they're going to the grocery store, they'll get you something or pick up a prescription, or maybe just sit with your loved one for a little bit while you go take a walk or take a nap or something like that. So just ask for help. You're in an amazing community. And for those of you who are not in one of the memory clubs, I highly recommend that you inquire about that. And you'll learn so much and get so much support. Next. So 6 immediate action items, and you can just go through each one and I'll talk about them. So create your village, finish or update your estate plan, share your wishes with your family. This is really important. Talk about this stuff, even though it's hard. Make sure your assets are organized, you fund the trust, you update beneficiaries, and you get this list of passwords and logins and the bills that you pay so that we don't, if there's an auto pay and we don't know about it, we cancel a credit card or freeze a credit card, it could be really detrimental. And then make sure you're properly insured. I go through a lot of discussion about that, but I don't have time today. So the myth is, oh, my spouse or my kids will just be able to handle things automatically. I promise you, it doesn't work that way unless all this stuff is really organized. Next. So step 2, this is for your loved one. This is the elder law part, and we do the best we can. It's never perfect, and we do the best we can. Next. So elder law, for me, gets triggered when people start needing help. And so it's 80% therapy, 20% law. It's the flip side of that when it's straight estate planning, but there's a lot going on in elder law. And so we talk through a lot of things and help with a lot of resources. Next. So I don't know if you guys can hear noises, but there's some sort of construction going on outside. If you can hear it, I apologize. There are a lot of different types of elder abuse. We have had clients with every single one, but the biggest one is financial, and also the scams that are out there. So be really careful. These scam artists are cunning. And they entrap a lot of people into these scams. And then I think, the emotional or the isolation part is also pretty common. Next. So the issues that we see a lot on the elder law side is that the caregiver is completely overwhelmed and needs help, after these conversations and meetings. Sometimes they're just counseling sessions. The most popular comment I get is like, oh my God, I feel like I can breathe, that I'm not in this alone, that I have the resources to help me. So then also a person who needs help could become difficult. There could be family drama, so we help navigate that. Maybe the person has already lost capacity, and so court is required for conservatorship, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Or the person is running out of money. There are lots of ways that there are some financial resources out there, whether it's through the VA or through Medi-Cal. There are some options. They're not perfect, but there are some options. Next. So what is conservatorship? If you don't have an advance directive, you don't have a power of attorney, you lose capacity, you're headed to conservatorship. Sometimes that's the case even with those two documents, but most of the time it's because those documents don't exist. So the judge is then going to decide who takes care of you, who takes care of your finances, can you vote, can you drive, all of those things. Next. So a lot of people will say to me, or some people will say, oh, I don't need it now, so I don't need to create it. And I alluded to this earlier when I said by the time we need these documents, it's too late to create them because you need a certain level of capacity in order to create an advance directive and power of attorney. It's actually the highest level of capacity. So there's tiered levels of capacity that we need. Next. So the issues that we see in conservatorships is one, it's super expensive. It's about $10,000 to start. And then thereafter, it's money. You have to do an accounting in front of the court every year. So there's money involved in that. And then it can be contested. It can be contested by family members who want to also have this job, or it can be contested by the proposed conservatee who doesn't want this. It's always a last resort for us. We never want to start a conservatorship if there's any way around it. Next. So the next three, action steps. Next. Oh, did we skip a slide? Okay, that's okay. Keep going. They might be a little out of order. So a sneak peek in long-term care planning. And as all of you know, this is very expensive. So those are just some ballpark figures. And then just so you know, Medicare does not pay for this. So if you're in a hospital for 3 days, Medicare will pay for rehab in a long-term care community, but they're not paying for up to 100 days. But that means you're progressing. So a lot of people, the hospital will say, okay, we can't do anymore. Or the rehab will say, okay, we can't do anymore. And then now it's private pay well in advance of those 100 days. So Medi-Cal has changed as of January of this year. We're still all learning the nuances of how this will be implemented, but essentially it is no longer asset-based. It is now based solely on income. So if you have too much income, then you have a share of costs. And we're learning all of the ways in which we can not have income count for this share of costs. So it's we're on a steep learning curve as elder law lawyers right now. The same issues are there in terms of quality of care. We want to make sure that if you are thinking of Medi-Cal, that you've checked out some of these communities. They're not always at the level that we would hope they are. And then there's eligibility, there's share of costs, and then there's recovery. So after you're gone or after your spouse is gone, then the state will say, okay, pay us back. So if your assets are not properly funded in a trust or with beneficiary designations, there will be recovery. If those things are properly done, there will not be recovery. In the past, we used to have these irrevocable trusts and all that. We don't have to do that. It's just a regular revocable trust. When you pass away, it becomes irrevocable, and that suffices. There are VA benefits out there. We don't do as many of these as we used to. As a matter of fact, I haven't done any in a long time because now there's this 3-year look back for assets, just like Medi-Cal has. So a lot of people don't get qualified for this. Next. So the problem area, and I could go into lots of examples, but again, I don't have time, is when you have enough capacity where conservatorship is not going to be granted, but you're making some poor decisions. And so it's really causing a lot of family drama. And this is an extraordinarily difficult time for family members. Next. So of course, the solution is an outside the box, elder law firm. But even then, we come up with plan A and B and C and D, and sometimes it just isn't perfect. Next. All right, so for those who still have capacity to make legal decisions, next. And medical, so you can just go down the whole list. I always tell everybody, please get capacity declarations now. If you will ever need a reverse mortgage, or anybody is ever going to say you couldn't have created these documents, if you have those capacity declarations from the doctor, then you can get the reverse mortgage when you need it later on. They're all requiring it now. But it has that capacity declaration has to be contemporaneous when you made the documents, specifically in that case for the power of attorney. So finish and update your estate plan. Make sure that your advance directives and powers of attorney are immediate. Discuss gifting authority, which we talked about. And then get in support groups. If you are here and you're already in support groups, you're great. If you're not, you have the perfect place to get started. Next. Oh, so the myth. People will say, oh, my situation is so simple, I can do it myself online. The horror stories that I have heard from there, please don't do it online. It can really create a mess. Next. So if you're unable to make decisions, next, and you can go through them, then sometimes we have to create a we have to create a conservatorship. And if not, then here are the 3 action items. Next, create that post. Remember, do not resuscitate if that's what you don't want, and then selective or comfort. Now, this is the only document that you can create for someone else. So when you have the Advanced Healthcare Directive authority, you can create a post for someone. Next. Again, marshal those assets. Same slide, super important. Next. And then family harmony. This is the part that breaks my heart when I get these phone calls where people are being torn apart. And so I can't say enough how important it is, not only for you and your well-being long-term, but also for your loved one to have harmony around them instead of fighting and dissension. Next. So find your A-team. I'm probably aging myself to have that on there, but find your A-team. Get the legal support that you need. Get an end-of-life expert. Figure out your memorial plan and get all the support and counseling that you can. Next. So we're almost done. I've listed all these action item checklists, so you'll get that. I have a huge favor to ask you. Next. You know a lot more about estate planning than you did an hour ago. Don't assume the people you love, your family and friends, have done this or that it's been updated properly. So spread the word. My mission is to educate as many people as I can so we don't have to go to court. And so I really, on hands and knees, beg you, share this information with people. So I'm happy to be here for questions and resources. Next. Remember, court sucks. I personally refuse to go to court. My law partner is the one who does that because it's such a horrible place. I don't want to spend my time in it, but she's really good at it and she enjoys doing that. So, but it's really awful. So please, 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 please get this stuff done so we don't have to go to court. Next. So 4 takeaways. Stuff happens. It happens before you think it's going to happen. So please do this planning in advance, even though it's a difficult subject matter. It's so important to get it done in advance. If you have any family members who are on SSI or Medi-Cal or have special needs, it's important to have a special needs trust and not leave to them outright, or it will mess up their benefits. As I said, court sucks. 99% of these plans have a fatal flaw the client usually doesn't know about. It's easier than you think. It's a gift to give the people you love. You can do it. Next. So people ask me all the time, how do I pick a really good lawyer? And so I came up with this list. You'll get to read it. I think first and foremost, obviously, the person has to know estate planning. So if you look at their website and it doesn't say that they do estate planning with maybe one, maybe two at the most other things, run, don't go to them. If there's all these areas of law they practice, then they can't be a specialist in this area. So don't use them. But then all these other things are really important to ask these sorts of questions. Next. That's it. So there's my contact information. I'm happy to answer questions. And again, if you aren't comfortable asking them now or we run out of time, please feel free to send me an email or give the office a call, and I'm happy to answer your questions later. Or if you think of them later, I'm happy to answer them later.
Thank you, Rebecca. We actually do have some questions in our chat box. So the first question is, and we hear this so many times, is, are there any reliable estate planning options for persons who do not have the financial resources to hire an elder law attorney?
I know this is a hard one. I mean, I think, on our website, if you email us, I'll tell you how to find it on our website. There's a statutory advanced healthcare directive and power of attorney. It doesn't have all the whistles that, bells and whistles that I talked about, but they are legally effective. People can write their own wills. They're called holographic wills. If you go to Google University, it will tell you what it needs. But essentially, you have to name the executor. You should say you want to waive bond if you trust this person, and say who gets your stuff. It has to be, as I said, handwritten, dated with your signature. It does not need to be notarized, does not need to be witnessed, and that will suffice. You can work on those beneficiary designations, but be really mindful about that because you want to make sure that they follow your intent. We're in a probate right now because a client's 50-year-old son passed away unexpectedly. She still doesn't know why. And his ex-girlfriend is the beneficiary on his 401k. And guess what? She's keeping the money. Shocking. I guess that's why she's the XX, right? But you want to make sure those are updated. There really isn't a good forum right now online for creating trust, but if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Next question.
And then someone asked, it was probably covered, but we don't know if they got it answered. So I want to let them know. They put, how does a surviving spouse protect their assets? We know that it can be expensive for aftercare.
So the most important thing is to work with an elder law attorney if Medi-Cal is a part of the equation. And then if you have a trust, then your assets will be protected as long as everything has properly been transferred into the trust.
Okay. And then do bank funds have to be in a trust if each account has accurate beneficiaries?
Oh, yeah. So it depends. The financial institution forms, this goes for any form, investment, 401k, banking, will have only so many layers that it can go. And so if you leave it to your two kids equally, and they each have kids and you're close to everybody, do you want, if one of your kids passes away first, knock on wood, God forbid, do you want that share to go to the surviving kid or to that kid's kids, your grandkids? And so whenever there are, a good amount of assets that we're talking about, then it's important that the trust be either the beneficiary or the owner of that account so that it follows the trust and we can add all these layers and conditions. If those grandkids are, 18, they're going to get that money outright. So we don't want that. So each situation is a little bit different on how I answer that question.
And then, do you need to get a trust in the state in which you own a home?
Good question. You do not need to get a trust in that state, but in every state that you have property, there will be a probate in each of those states if that property hasn't been transferred or assigned to the trust, right? So we record the deed in another state, that's fine, and name the trust as the owner in California. We've had clients where they have property in 2 or 3 other states, and there's a probate going in each state because they didn't do this before they passed away.
Okay. And then someone wrote, could you go over a little bit more about durable power of attorney and spouse?
Not sure I totally understand that question. Be sure that the power of attorney says durable power of attorney. If it just says general power of attorney, it doesn't have the durable language, then it's only effective while you have capacity. And when you lose capacity, it doesn't work anymore. So we don't want that. In terms of a spouse, maybe what you're referring to is if there's separate property. And in California, if there's separate property, your separate property is property you brought to the marriage or property you inherited during the marriage. If you want your spouse to be able to access that to take care of you, both of you, or children or grandchildren or whatever, then your power of attorney document has to legally allow them to access separate property or they can't. I hope that answered your question. If not, send me an email.
Thank you. Someone wrote, how do estate planning attorneys charge, and what is a normal fee or cost for estate planning?
This is a wide spectrum. So never go to those like legal, they're like paralegals. It's like We the People or those, because those documents are terrible. So I've heard that there are attorneys out there, which we call trust mills, similar to puppy mills, I guess. And they'll do this for, 1,500 or 2,000 or something. Those documents are just cookie cutter. One client described it like Mad Libs. You're just filling in things. You have no idea if it's going to work. There's no education. Some places charge up to, $10,000 to start this process. So I would say the average is probably around 4,500-ish, but then they are going to charge for extra things. We're a little bit more expensive, but we have a life plan that includes everything. So it's a big, wide dollar number.
Okay.
I wish I could be more specific.
Thank you. And I just want to acknowledge, someone put in the chat as well that there are agencies that provide some free elder law services. So thank you all for just sharing with one another and being interactive. And someone made more than of a comment of just they would like an acronym list, maybe just to understand some of the slides a little bit better. And also just want to mention, as Rebecca said, she'll provide the slides so that everybody can kind of go through them with time, because I think they are there within the slide and sometimes it's hard to see when they're going through. So we'll be able to help you out with that. And Rebecca is also gracious in sharing her email for any follow-up questions. Someone would like to know, they are a blended family and have an AB trust. Why is that a fatal flaw?
Oh, how much time do I have to answer this question? Like a minute? Do I have a full minute? Okay.
Yes, you have a full minute.
Okay, so with an AB split, it means when the first spouse dies, just so we're all on the same page, the trust splits into 2 parts, the survivor's half and the decedent's half. So the idea in a blended family is that the decedent's half is kind of frozen in time and protected for that person's kids, right? Because you have different kids. The survivor uses his or her share, and then the decedent's share kind of stays there. That's the idea. The problem is, who is the trustee on the decedent's share? So you can imagine if the surviving spouse is the trustee, all the trust says is you have to substantially exhaust your share as the survivor, and then you can access the principal. You always get to access the income, but then you can access the principal. Okay, so how do I substantially exhaust it? I give it away. I spend it. All right, so that doesn't work to have a surviving spouse. Now, what happens if the decedent's children are the trustee? Maybe they get along with their step parent, maybe they don't. You don't want that person to be the trustee either, because then maybe they're not going to be fair when they really do substantially exhaust. So that's not a good option. So who's the trustee? I will bet you 99% of the people who have an AB trust, it's one of those two as trustee, because the lawyer hasn't gotten to that next level of how does this play out in reality. Reality is you need a neutral third party to be that trustee, and I never see that. So the other part is when you do that administration, and let's say your house is your biggest asset, and let's say you have a mortgage and you have to divide the house, the deed gets split 50% into one trust, 50% into the other, the lender might accelerate the loan and say, you have to pay the full amount now. So it is a mess that if you really don't talk through all the issues, I'm not saying it's never a good idea, but if you don't really talk through the issues, it's not going to work like you think. I hope that helped.
Thank you. And someone asked, do you review trust and the cost?
We do that. Typically, I would say 95% of the time. There are some exceptions. We charge $9.95 to review all of the documents, review your asset sheet. We need you to fill out the asset sheet, but we review the asset sheet. And then we have a couple-hour meeting to go over everything and talk through everything. So it's a really good deal for people, because it's much less than our hourly rate would be if we were charging hourly for all of that time. And then by the end of that meeting, we really know what we're doing. Do we have to start over because of whatever all these fatal flaws are, or can we just tweak things and update things? It just depends on each one.
Okay. And then what type of documents should we take when we are visiting an estate lawyer or attorney?
So you if you're starting from scratch, you definitely want to have your deed handy, and you want to create a list of all of your assets. And it's really important to know who the owners are or beneficiaries of those assets. And then it's a whole bunch of, every attorney will have their own sort of workbook or questionnaire. And so it's just important to fill that out. We don't require a lot of stuff, really just the deed. And then if you have your estate planning done already, then on the asset sheet, I want to see statements, because so often clients are like, it's definitely in the trust. And then when we look at the statements, we realize it's not in the trust, right? We want to make sure that your house is in the trust. So that's why we're always verifying deeds. And so those are the big ones.
Okay. I have my mother listed as beneficiary on my 401k. What do we need to do in this situation?
I'm not sure how old you are or your mom is, but you can have the one person be the beneficiary, and then you can have a backup. So oftentimes we'll say, a spouse or an adult child, or in this case, a parent, is the first beneficiary, and then the trust is the backup beneficiary. A trust can never own a 401k or a retirement plan. It's always just a beneficiary. But oftentimes it's the backup beneficiary.
Okay. And then if my husband doesn't want to make a living trust, can I go ahead and do one myself?
It depends. It depends if it's who owns the assets. So if both of you own the assets, then both of you have to participate. If you just own the assets, then only you can participate. And if your spouse has lost capacity, then if there's a power of attorney and it enables you to do that within all the powers, then you can do it for your spouse. And if not, then we have to go to court to get the court's permission to fund the trust with the community property share of the spouse.
Okay. And then someone asked, do they need to be married to their partner to create a trust?
Nope, we have all kinds of lifetime partners who are not married. I will say that there are some benefits, tax benefits of being married and benefits within an estate plan of being married. So two of our clients, we've long-term, they've been together a long time, and we encourage them to get married. So we're responsible for 2 weddings.
And then should a timeshare be included in a trust?
Oh my God, those timeshares. I will tell you that I don't want to say like in the 90 percentile, 97%, your kids, your loved ones don't want those timeshares. So they can be transferred to the trust, and it really depends if your beneficiaries want them or not. If not, you just kind of let them go, and then nobody's responsible to pay those dues every year. But we usually ask our clients to work on funding that because they won't talk to us, and sometimes it's kind of easy, and a lot of the time it's really hard to get those into the trust.
Okay. And then we have about 5 more minutes for questions. So I have 3 here.
Okay.
Can you remind us again what 2 legal documents are recommended for 18-year-olds?
So the Advanced Healthcare Directive to make medical decisions, and the power of attorney to make legal and financial decisions. And so this, became really important to us early in our firm, when one of our beloved clients, who were in their, probably 50s at the time, their adult son was traveling where he was in college, and he got into an accident, and he went to the hospital, and nobody would talk to the parents. And they were crazy over this, obviously. So that's why it's such an important thing. It's like you graduate high school, you get an advanced directive and power of attorney. They go hand in hand, or they should.
Thank you. What happens if you don't have a pour over will but have a trust?
You need to get one. Go back to the attorney and say, why the hell didn't you do it? And let me tell you, when I first created a trust with my husband, the attorney never talked about the advance directive. This was in 2002. Never talked about the advance directive, power of attorney, or pour over will. All we got was a trust. So it does happen.
And then the question was, sorry, it might have been a follow-up. What would that be in accordance with the state that has common law where some may not if you're not married?
I'm not sure, but if you live in California, we're a community property state. That doesn't have anything to do with the pour over will, but you want to have your estate plan reviewed by somebody in that state, because we all have, it's state law. So we all have very particular rules. Each state is very different. For example, Massachusetts, they won't honor an advanced healthcare directive. It has to be a health proxy form, right? And so some states have inheritance tax. There's about 10 or 15 that still do. Most don't. So if you come from a state where there's no inheritance tax, we don't plan for taxes, because the federal estate tax is really high, 13.61 million per person. And so then you move to a state that has inheritance tax, like Massachusetts, you need to do some tax planning. So you want to make sure that you're complying with the state in which you live.
Okay. I think that might have been a follow-up to the question that was, do you need to be married to have a will? So I think they were talking about states with common law.
You still should have all of this in place. It doesn't matter whether you're married or not. If you have assets and you don't have a trust, it's still going to go through probate when you die.
Okay. And then someone wrote, the patient son asked a family friend to be the health care power of attorney due to consider his mother, the caretaker, would not be able to make objective decisions. What happens if the power of attorney and the mother have different opinions on making medical decisions?
Really important to talk through these issues, right? So it's sometimes true that a spouse can't do it for whatever reason. Then the next person that you pick has to be able to put their wishes aside to honor yours, right? They should be local, or be able to come here and kind of manage things temporarily and then get some boots on the ground here. They should be really good in the medical community, and they should be a harmonizer, not someone who kind of creates conflict. So it's the most important job, I think, is the Advanced Healthcare Directive agent. So it's important to really talk through these issues.
All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for being here. That concludes our questions. We also got a lot of praise in the questions and chats for an excellent presentation, and even some that are not local that are going to miss out on your services, but we're very grateful to hear this.
Well, I might know people in your state, so feel free to ask, and I can definitely, if I have recommendations, I'll give them to you.
All right. Um, Again, thank you, Rebecca. It's always a pleasure to have you, and we'll see you soon in one of our memory clubs. We're always grateful to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you all so, so much. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. Bye-bye. Enjoy. Um, all right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for that interactive time. We want to remind everybody to put your questions in the Q&A box. I'll be looking at both, but just to ensure that your question does get answered. And now, as we continue our great program for today, we have Dr. Bruna Martins Klein. She is a great advocate and partner as well. She's an assistant professor of clinical psychology at the University of California. She's a licensed clinical psychologist. She is the director of Neural Vitality Laboratory at USC and is co-director of the USC Center for Mindfulness Science. She conducts research using cutting-edge neuroscience and physiological methods to understand basic mechanisms that can inform late life therapy interventions to promote emotional well-being and longevity. And I've had the pleasure to meet with her and get to know her one-on-one. And she has such a passion for this community, and it's just great to have her here. And she's going to be talking about emotional resilience in early memory loss. So please welcome Dr. Martin Kleins.
Thank you so much, Cassandra, for that lovely intro. And thank you all for coming and being here today. Like Cassandra just mentioned, this is really a passion of mine, is helping older adults and caregivers adjust to the challenges of adapting to early memory loss. And so I feel really honored to be invited to share some of the tools that both in my research as well as in my clinical capacity working with older adults over the last 10 years, I've found really help people as they're adapting to these changes. In my laboratory, we do a lot of research on actually what gets better as we grow older. And one of those things is actually being resilient in the face of challenges that we don't expect. And today I'm going to be sharing some of these findings that I've had from my work, and specifically focusing in on some boots on the ground techniques that you can use in your day-to-day lives as you are navigating some of the tough emotions, tough challenges that come with adapting to memory loss. So let's go on to the next slide. So the first thing is that a lot of research shows that being aware of changes that are happening to our bodies, to our lives, gives us a lot of stability emotionally. And part of what happens is that when we have the freedom to adapt our routines, that's one of the things that is most telling of who has kind of a positive trajectory as they're adapting to changes versus a harder time. And for years, I actually worked with veterans who had amputations, who had lost their, ability to walk while they were in the service. And it was really telling how different, people in a very similar predicament actually responded to those changes to their bodies. And one thing that built that resilience was having the freedom to be creative and find ways to still engage in meaningful actions and meaningful activities, feeling engaged with community and family, even when things are changing in their lives, right? And obviously, the routine is not going to be the same as it used to be before, but being able to find ways to keep us grounded, where we're really feeding into the activities that matter the most in our lives, is emotionally stabilizing, right? So, sort of quote that you could say is like, changes can happen, but one thing you can't take that away from me, is our ability to choose how we spend our time, and what kind of things we prioritize. Next slide. So feeling in control very much enhances our health. And that's a matter of perspective, more so than a matter of factual what's going on. So, for instance, there's a really interesting series of studies that were done out of Harvard by Ellen Langer's group. And what they did is there were nursing home residents, same level of cognitive changes going on with both. And for one group, they had them have a plant in their room, and they were in charge of how often they water the plant, what sort of positioning they had of the plant in the room. And in the other condition, they actually had the plant placed by a nurse and cared for by the nurse. And what they found is that people who actually were in charge of their own plant demonstrated better immune responses when they were sick. They had better heart functioning. They had stronger physical strength, the grip strength, and on average had better life satisfaction. So just the act of feeling like we are caring for others and feeling like we're in control, right? That we have a say, that gives us a lot of kind of health strength as well as emotional resilience. Next slide. So in addition, there's a lot of research showing that resilience is a complex thing, but when we do a longitudinal study looking at, in a group of undergraduates starting at, in Boston, over time, and comparing them to community individuals who are, less educated, less resourced, no matter what, doesn't matter how much money you have, how many resources you have, having healthy connections and relationships is one of the things that predicts long life as well as better cognition. And in addition, having a positive perspective. So no matter what's happening in your life, being able to, find a silver lining, be proactive and find ways to maximize the strengths while not harping on the negatives. Both of those things were really predictive of longevity and cognitive functioning. So next slide. So all this together, right? We know that both feeling in control as well as feeling connected are powerful predictors of longevity and health. And so in the context of what we're talking about today, for this talk, what happens when we are forced to adapt to uncertain cognitive changes, right? And what happens when we lose control over what's happening to our bodies, what's happening to our loved ones, and we feel disconnected from the world at large, right? You're going through a change and it feels like I don't have the same connection with my community or my activities that I used to have. Next slide. So fret not, I would not leave you all on that cliffhanger without providing some answers. So today, what I'm going to hope to do is cover with you all what are some ways that we can be aware of some of the emotional challenges that do come up as we're adapting to this uncertainty, to some of these changes that are happening, even if we don't want them to. And what's the cost of avoiding those emotions when they come up? And then we'll talk about different ways that we can manage each of these emotions. And we'll actually have some exercises that I'll guide today that can help promote resilience in your daily life. I want to leave you with some things you can take with you. You absolutely will have a copy of my slides with the notes in them, so you can see, how you can implement these day to day. And finally, I want to share some support resources with you in case those resources on their own, trying these tips that I suggest don't feel like they're hitting the mark in terms of getting support. I'll share some support here at USC that we're offering via telehealth. So if you want to gain more one-on-one support, how that can happen, as well as if you're interested in contributing to the research on this. So research on resilience and caregiving in the context of early memory loss, how you can get involved in studies that we're running as well. So I wear those two hats. So I'll share a bit about that at the end. So let's jump in. So next slide. So one thing that happens is a lot of times as these changes occur, we don't want them to be there. We start having a lot of stressful thoughts and emotions pop into the picture, and trying to get them to disappear, wanting to make them go away, is a common shared sentiment as we're going through this. And it's extremely straining and energy demanding to try to avoid thinking about a major change that's going on in your life. So an analogy I like to make, it's sort of like if I told you right now, please do not think of a giant, delicious angel food chocolate cake covered in fudge, just so warm, it's been heated up, all of that chocolate just hitting the fork and then hitting your tongue. Don't think about the feeling of that cake as you bite into it. I'm pretty sure, I can't see your faces right now, but that many of us are salivating a little bit just looking at that photo, much less my description. And if I say don't think of the cake, it's just not effective. And there's research in psychology since the 60s showing from Titchener's lab that if we tell people not to think of things, that's when you think of them even more. So it's human nature too. When we try to make something go away, it bounces back up and it becomes even more salient. So whether or not we want to think about what we're feeling, our avoidance of it actually makes it just come up more. And it's also very human nature to want to avoid considering the changes that are happening or thinking about maybe legal decisions that you're making, like in Rebecca's talk. It's really, really common to not want to think about those things. So if I don't think about it, maybe it's not true, right? So it's that wishful thinking by avoidance. So going on to the next slide, I want to hear about you, about the folks on this poll today. So in the past 2 weeks, who here on our call has tried to avoid hard emotions related to their own diagnosis or the diagnosis of a loved one? And this could be things like snacking a lot to not think about what's going on, changing the topic when someone asks you how you're doing or how your loved one's doing, watching a lot of TV shows to try to get your mind off of things. So we populated this poll on the screen, and I'm curious just who has had this come up in the last 2 weeks. You can go ahead and click. I hear you, Darlene. Yeah. I think I definitely want to normalize that many, many of us are probably feeling this, and I'm not sure how to see your poll response, but let's see here. Yeah, so it looks like 54% of those on the call today have had this come up, so trying to avoid what's going on. And then about 28% said they haven't been avoiding. So the thing about caregiving slash getting used to memory changes is that there'll be times that we really want to act, right? We want to engage with our options, make decisions, and there are times we really don't want to, right? And I want to just on the next slide showcase kind of what the costs are of avoiding our emotions, even though we all do it. So there's, excuse me, there's some research showing that neglecting your feelings can actually contribute to worse insomnia. Like I said, it lowers your immune system. So it actually makes us more susceptible to illness, as well as, making us feel depressed, more likely to engage in stress eating or substance abuse, right? Or maybe more likely to turn to substances or binging on TV or food to get away from those thoughts. And so being aware of your feelings can actually be a first step, right? Not in dwelling on them or feeling stuck in them, but actually figuring out how best to express them and how to manage them, right? Which could be problem solving oriented, or it might not. Next slide. So sometimes just noticing what it is that we're feeling and what's coming up in and of itself can help us feel better. It feels less overwhelming when we're able to put a label to the monster that's coming up in our mind, right? So even if we don't have a solution or a specific antidote to the problem that's coming up in our thoughts, when we're able to identify what feeling is coming up and what's the thought, that in and of itself is therapeutic. So for instance, maybe some of us have been thinking things like, when will things go back to normal, like before my diagnosis or before my loved one's diagnosis? And being able to identify when that thought comes up, there's some grief here, there's a feeling of missing or longing for the way things were, that normalizes it, right? We're able to put a word to it. Or the thought, I'm staying up worrying about this, why is this happening to me? So getting stuck in thought cycles, right? If you're able to catch your thoughts as they start cycling through at night, you can identify that as anxiety, right? And being able to put a label to, oh, there's my anxiety coming up for me. That can sometimes, clarify what's going on so we can figure out how to proceed. Or maybe the thought, I hate never having time to myself anymore, right? And feeling angry about that. Being able to label that anger and figuring out for you what sorts of strategies help you manage anger in the moment, right? So you can see how this can be a pivot point, being able to identify what is the emotion that's coming up and then how do I want to manage it. So I'm going to go through a list of different emotions you may or may not experience. And if you don't experience them, that's okay. And if you're experiencing them, that's also okay, right? But being able to know what the emotion is, and if it does come up, know some tips for how to manage each one, I think is a helpful kind of toolkit to have as you're going through memory changes. So let's go ahead and start with guilt, our first emotion. So we can do 2 next slides. And guilt, unsurprisingly, is whenever you're blaming yourself or taking fault for something that's undesirable and is happening to you or to someone you love. And with memory changes, this can lead many families to experience different forms of guilt, of things like, I brought this on myself, right? Something I did in the past contributed to my diagnosis or to my loved one's diagnosis. Or right now, I'm not doing enough, right? Or I should know more. I'm not doing enough research to know what to do or to make the right decisions. And so blaming yourself for either not having done enough or not doing enough, or feeling like you can't do enough in the future. So again, I'm curious about, for this group, what's coming up right now. So on the next slide, we'll do another poll. And I'm curious about, on the webinar, who has been having thoughts related to their diagnosis that relate to guilt, or to the diagnosis of a loved one. So thoughts like, I should have done more, or is this my fault? Is what's happening my fault? So we'll go ahead and populate that poll up on the screen. And I'll be curious to hear, and obviously if there are any specific examples or questions as we go through as well, you can always pop those in the chat. And through my work, working with caregivers over the last, like more than a decade, a lot of these come up not only for the individuals who are noticing memory losses themselves, but also families who are caring for loved ones who are going through memory loss as well. And perfectionism is definitely a burden that many of us carry on our shoulders. And I know there's a lot of movers and shakers and people who like to solve problems on this call. So that can contribute to this too. All right, so it looks about half-half in terms of who's been feeling guilt related to feeling like they need to do more than they're currently doing for themselves or their loved one, with 52% saying yes. And for the second question of, is this my fault? About 27% of folks said yes, and most of you said no. So it sounds like many of us are struggling with a bit of guilt, perhaps of, am I doing the right thing, or second guessing ourselves. So since so many of us are feeling that, what can we do about it, right? So on the next slide, we can review a couple of strategies that I would recommend. So next slide. So my tip is to engage in self-compassion. So when you notice guilt come up, remind yourself, right, with a statement, I'm doing the best I can, or I'm in a difficult situation and I'm doing the best that I can given everything. Reminding yourself that there's no such thing as perfect can help put that perfectionism monster at bay a little bit. But it's easier said than done. So a lot of times it sounds hokey, but writing this down, putting it somewhere you see it every day to remind you of everything that you are doing, right? Because a lot of times our minds automatically focus on what we're not doing and putting us down while not taking stock of all the things we are doing. And so by shifting that perspective, we can build more of that resilient type coping. And we deserve credit where it's due, right? So give yourself that credit through your words. And then next slide. And another recommendation I have is to engage in a self-compassion break. And I feel like we deserve one right now. We've talked about some hard things this morning, no doubt. We're talking about hard emotions. And so what I want you to do, if you're able and willing to come along on this journey with me for a few minutes, is to think of a situation in your life right now that's really challenging, regarding either your own memory loss or the memory loss of a loved one that's causing you stress. And as you call that situation to mind, I want to see if you can actually feel where in your body you hold that stress. So for some of us, that might be a tightness in the chest, or it might be a feeling that is in the pit of the stomach. You might hold it with tension in your shoulder blades or in your back. There's no one place that we hold stress, but we all usually feel it in our bodies. So go ahead and engage in calling that situation to mind and seeing where in your body you're feeling it now. As you feel that and kind of hold it, I want you to say to yourself, first off, this is what suffering feels like. This is a moment of suffering for me. And say, this hurts, and this is stress in my body. This is a mindfulness of the stress and where you hold it. The second thing I want you to focus on is to remind yourself, suffering is a part of life that's common to all humanity. Other people feel this way. I am not alone. We all struggle in our lives. And I want you to put your hands over your heart or give yourself a hug or hold your hands together, whatever comforting gesture. And again, I know it sounds hokey, but try it, really. I feel like with this, you get what you put in. So for me, I think putting my hand over my heart, try to adopt a soothing touch. Whatever you discover for yourself gives you a sense of connection to your body and that part of your body that you're hurting. And say to yourself, may I be kind to myself. You can also ask yourself, what do I need to hear right now to express kindness to myself? And you can imagine if there were a mentor or a loved one, alive or who's passed, who could come in, swoop in, and help you feel comforted. What statement would they say to you? And give yourself that statement. Some examples might be, may I give myself compassion right now in this moment when I need it most? Or may I learn to accept myself as I am, no matter what changes are happening? May I forgive myself for anything I did wrong in the past? Or may I be strong? Or may I be patient? And this practice is something that we can all engage in any time of day or night. And it helps you remember to really evoke that sense of normalizing that we feel pain as humans. It's not something we need to avoid. It's natural that it comes up. It's actually healthy that it comes up. And it gives us just a sign that we can listen to, noticing where we're feeling it, and then adjusting, right? Adjusting when that monster comes in that says you're not doing enough, or you're doing a bad job, right? So we can give ourselves that self-compassion break, a break to remind ourselves of what we deserve credit for, of our worth, right? And so this is an exercise that you can do in 1 to 2 minutes. It's super short, but quite impactful. Next slide. So resentment is the next emotion that I want to talk about. So let's go ahead and go into that. So feeling like you have to do everything by yourself, especially when you're put in a situation that you didn't choose to be in, it's really common to feel resentful of everything that's going on with the diagnosis. And so little things can bother us when we're feeling unappreciated, unacknowledged, feeling angry at the situation. And so let's go ahead and poll you here on the call today. So I'm curious, who has struggled with thoughts like these in the past 2 weeks? It's really not fair that I have to deal with this. Or why is this happening to me? So let's go ahead and pop up the poll. I'm curious, resentment can come in different forms as well, of maybe resenting family members for not helping you more when you're having to go through so much, or resenting maybe the particular health plan that you're on for not covering some services that you need, or not qualifying for something that really would help you a lot in this moment. If I had a nickel for every time there's a system level resentment that I've heard from a client, I could retire today. It's very, very common. And I'm just curious for us today on the call, who has struggled with thoughts like, it's not fair that I have to deal with this? And then go ahead and click yes or no. And then why is this happening to me? And again, yes or no. And resentment and anger kind of go hand in hand. So this might feel a little redundant, but it's a little bit different. Sometimes we can just be mad about what's happening, and sometimes it's more anchored to ourselves or someone else or the situation at hand. Right, so we'll just give you a minute to wrap up. These are always fun because I get to know you better. Yeah, so we'll wrap up the poll in about 30 seconds. If you all want to log in your responses. All right. It looks like so we've got a winner with this one. So it sounds like a lot of people are resenting the situation. So about 63% of you said that you are resenting having to deal, with what's going on right now with the diagnosis. And about 61% are saying, why is this happening to me? So it's really interesting how often we feel resentful towards situations we can't control that are undesirable. And moving on to the next slide, I want to give you my tip for one of the most powerful things you can do. So one thing is managing resentment, can be easier when you're not doing it alone. So a lot of times when you join a support group, either as an individual who's undergoing memory changes or as a caregiver caring for someone undergoing memory changes, you can discuss with other people who are in a similar situation as your own, common feelings you have in common, as well as sharing, just learning by hearing other people share their story, how humanizing and normal it is to feel upset when you are adapting to a change or shock. And sometimes, the first step is identifying that emotion, and then the support group can actually help you also identify some solutions or possible resources that other people in a similar form of resentment have used, right? Even if it is changing your perspective, right? When it comes to being resentful towards family members, that sort of thing, how to let go of that so that you can, not only not have the help, but also kind of emotionally feeling upset, about not having it, it's kind of like a double arrow, right? You get hit by first not having the support and then being upset that you're not having the support that you should. So I think talking to other people who normalize that, it's almost like doing a collective self-compassion break. So I really recommend that. And on the next page, we'll do another exercise together, which is one you can do on your own. So if you're not at the support group, right, how can you deal with resentment when it comes up? And so loving kindness meditation is one that we can engage in. And so if you want to join in with me, I want you to sit comfortably on your chair with your back straight, if it's possible, feet flat on the ground, and relax into whatever meditation posture works best for you. And this is a big pet peeve of mine, but don't think of meditation as sleepy time, but instead of a time of reflection. So it's kind of like a time to self-reflect. And so we don't want to be sleeping when we're self-reflecting. We might get less out of it when we do that. So for this one, I want you to really be present in your body, notice the environment you're in, and take a breath. And just noticing how your body accommodates each breath as you're settling in. And I want you to turn focus to your heart. And as you notice your heart beating, I want you to imagine that each beat is a beat that's bringing in gratitude and warmth. And as you do this, I want you to call to mind a person or a pet of past or present whose steady love and unconditional acceptance of you has touched your heart in a special way. And you can allow yourself to experience their loving kindness as if they were right next to you, happy for your presence and grateful for you just the way you are. I want you to notice how this image eases your body and your mind. Where do you feel that warmth? Right? And maybe in the hands and the chest, wherever you feel it, just noticing that warm feeling of connection. And keep it simple, allow thoughts to arise and come back to your heart. And put this loving kindness and warmth that you're receiving into the words that we're about to read together. And I want you to, I'm going to say a phrase and then you say it back to yourself. So, may I be held in loving kindness. May I be happy and safe. May I be healthy in body and in mind. May I always have enough. May my heart know peace. And you can repeat this as many times as you want, really savoring each phrase and feeling that ability to warm and open your heart through the kindness of this loved one. And similarly, I next want you to bring to mind someone who means a lot to you and someone whose presence you can relax in and really feel fully appreciated as a person for. Feel that goodness of the heart connection you have with this person or pet, and feel your mutual gratitude for each other. And now, rather than receiving their well wishes, we're going to send them well wishes. I want you to imagine that that person is touched by your wishes to experience happiness and peace. So, tell them, may you be held in loving kindness. May you be happy and safe. May you be healthy in body and in mind. May you always have enough. And may your heart know peace. And I want you to finally, even though it's a stranger, imagine all of the people that are on this call right now. And again, I want you to send them all of this warmth, to comfort them, to cradle them, to hold them. And let's tell each other on the call right now, may all of us be held in loving kindness. May all of us be happy and safe. May we all be healthy in body and spirit. May we always have enough. May our hearts know peace. And just notice how you feel now versus when we started the exercise, right? So thanks for going through that with me. Hopefully that was interesting to folks. So let's go ahead and move on to our next emotion, anxiety. Next slide. Everybody knows this one well, but the feeling that things aren't in control and are overwhelming, feeling that urge to get organized, right? That might come up for folks. And it can be an impulse to run away or feeling spirals of worry, racing heart, shortness of breath. I'm sure many of us have felt it. So let's go ahead and poll you on who's feeling anxious in the audience today. So who here is feeling like in the last 2 weeks, either regarding your own diagnosis or loved ones, you felt overwhelmed planning care tasks, worried about future symptoms, or difficulty sleeping? And I know I'm a talker, so we're going a little late, so maybe we'll make this a short, we'll give you just a minute or two to click your response. So you can choose 1, 2, all of them, none of them. Let us know. It's kind of fun. I get to meet all 119 of you in a way through us sharing how we're feeling. And I appreciate you being open to going there with me. I know it's not easy talking about these difficult emotions, but you can see you're not the only one feeling them. You can imagine if we were in an actual support group, we'd actually be able to talk to each other. So it's even more normalizing and nice to share ideas, to share what it is that we're struggling with. All right. So it looks like about 66% of you said you're feeling overwhelmed by I can't say it, overwhelmed with planning care tasks. And then about 83% are worried about future symptoms, and 56% having a difficult time sleeping because of your racing thoughts. So I definitely want to give you something that can help with anxiety. So let's go to the next slide and try another exercise real quick together. Oh, I should tell you what the exercise is first. So anxiety is a sign from your body that is telling you to leave dangerous situations quickly. And what's tricky is that when we're not being chased by a lion, we engage in this stress response that actually can be damaging to the body over time if it's prolonged, right? It was designed to just happen and then go away, so that we can be safe when there's a predator or a bear that's running after you. And the issue is that it can cause a lot of health problems if we don't manage our anxiety over time. So one way that we have this typical stress response is by engaging in very shallow upper chest breathing. We don't have long out breaths. And a way that we can try to control that is to engage in long, deep breaths that actually engage our bellies. So actually moving our belly up and down uses our diaphragm, which is the muscle at the base of the stomach that actually regulates airflow in and out of the lungs. So I'll go ahead and give you a very abbreviated version of this. So go ahead and move on to the next slide and we'll practice it together. So go ahead and we're going to do, it's an interesting exercise. So place your right hand on your stomach. So right on the belly, I'll zoom out a little so you can see. So right here. And then I want you to place your left hand at the top of your chest. So right over the chest muscle. And I don't want you to try to manipulate your breathing, but just notice as you're breathing, what you're noticing, which hand is moving. And if I tell you to take a deep breath in, for many of us, you might be feeling that left hand move, right? And then breathing it out. And take a breath in. And take a breath out. So folks are probably feeling this hand, right? The left hand is moving in and out. And let's take a deliberate breath in, hold it, and then release, and see how that left hand moves. So let's do that. Breathe in deeply. Hold it, and now breathe out. Okay. So a lot of times when we're breathing through our nose and our mouth, we're actually moving our chest, and that's the upper breathing I was talking about. But I want to show you how to do a different kind of breathing. So keep your hands in those positions again. But this time, looking at this image here, what we're going to do is we're going to poof our bellies out and not breathe through our mouth. We're only going to breathe through our nose as we breathe in and fill in our bellies with air and then we're gonna breathe out through the nose and tuck our bellies back in. And what you should feel is this right hand moving. So let's try that together now. So close your mouth and breathe through your nose and breathe. I'll talk, you don't talk. You just focus on the exercise. So go ahead and take a deep breath in and poof out your belly. Yep, and then hold it. And now breathe it out through the nose and move your belly in. Feels weird, right? It's a little awkward. Let's do it one more time. So breathe in through the nose, belly's out, and then breathe out, belly in. One last one. Breathe out, breathe in, belly out. Hold it, and then deep breath out, belly in. Awesome. So I'm glad that we got a chance to practice this. This is a tough one, and I think the more you practice it, the more you can differentiate deep breathing from shallow breathing. And a lot of times people will call this scuba breath. So when you breathe in through your nose and out through your nose, it moves your belly and your diaphragm, right? And when that happens, it sounds a little bit like we're underwater, like you'll hear that kind of in, out. So play with this. You know, our breath is something we're always holding. It's always with us. Hopefully we're not holding it for too long. We're taking breaths. But the more we practice this deep scuba diver's breath, the more oxygen we're getting to the brain, the more we're actually relaxing the stress response. So by engaging in a minute or two of this, it can help you go from deep anxiety mode to being in a calmer state of mind that can actually allow us to make decisions more clearly. So thanks for being brave adventurers with me and going into the deep sea with our breath. So let's talk about the last emotion for today, which is irritation. So quick poll, who among you has felt short-tempered or frustrated over the past few weeks with your loved ones, with yourself, or with the world? So irritation, irritability can mean we're short-fused. Maybe we are quick to anger, defensive. We might say things in the heat of the moment that we kind of regret. So I'm curious for those of you who are on the call, what emotion you felt has been really challenging for you. So go ahead and you can click one, none, both, you know, the first two or all three. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just taking a pulse of where we're all at right now in terms of our irritability. So curious. These are fun. And it's sort of like when we are even able to label that we're feeling irritable, it helps us figure out when is a good time to engage in some of that deep breathing. So we'll wrap up our poll in 15 seconds. And yeah, I know that for many people, regret and irritation go hand in hand. So it's common to feel mixed emotions also with early memory changes, feeling maybe irritable at first and then afterwards feeling regret. So yeah, so a lot of people are frustrated at their loved ones. It looks like 85% of you, 61% are frustrated with themselves, and 54% are feeling frustrated with the world. And it's very common to feel irritated towards all three, right? So again, going on to the next slide, you know, it's a very common emotion that when we're stressed, little things can upset us. And when we're not sleeping well, that makes it really easy for us to be quick to emotion. It actually changes the way that your brain processes stress. So when we're sleep deprived, we're more likely to get angry. And so actually the amygdala is more hyperactive when we don't sleep, when we're sleep deprived or have, you know, poor quality of sleep. So you can imagine that it's harder to control what we say when we're exhausted, when we're quick to anger and quick to irritation. And so my advice is to take a self-care break. And so that can come in the form of taking a walk, taking a moment to drink a cup of tea. And this isn't to avoid what is making you irritated about, it's more to give yourself a moment of calm, similar to deep breathing, an action that can help you reset button. So then you can figure out, okay, let me think about the thing that irritated me and how I best want to proceed. The tough thing for many of us is that when we feel irritated, the action that comes with it of lashing out or saying something or that thing that we regret doing, right? Or eating a box of cookies to feel better. When we separate the irritation from the action, we can decide which action is the one I want to take, right? And that gives us that freedom of choice. That is how I started the whole presentation. We have a say in how we cope. No one can take that away from us. And so next slide. Yes, heart, I feel you. Oh my gosh. So cognitive changes, in summary, are emotionally challenging. And I hope that you can hold on to some of the tips we went through today for managing some of the difficult emotions that are involved. So that could be identifying how you're feeling, taking a self-compassion break, sending loving kindness and receiving loving kindness from a loved one or from the world or from strangers even, feeling connected, right? Engaging in deep breathing and attending support groups that can help you feel more together and more of a sense of community as you're dealing with an extremely shocking diagnosis. And if you try these strategies and you still feel like you need additional support, there's no shame in seeking support from an individual therapist or counselor. I think like that's a pet peeve of mine is no one should have to go through something alone if they need extra help. And so next slide. So a beautiful thing, and I think this is my social justice contribution to our community, is that I'm a supervisor at USC and I help train students who are getting their PhDs in clinical psychology on how to do counseling with older adults, with retired people, as well as with younger people. And since the 70s, we've been running the center that provides specific care for people who are over 55, as well as people who are going through memory changes earlier in life, but with an eye to like understanding what dementia is, understanding what the diagnosis means, understanding what caregiving is and why it's difficult. Next slide. So if you need services, we can offer free therapy, and it's available through Zoom as well as in person at our clinic at USC with completely free parking. So we can address things like depression, anxiety, caregiving stress, insomnia, and the changes that come with the grief, right, of adjusting to a new diagnosis like many of you are. And we use evidence-based treatments, so things like cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, and more. And shameless plug, next slide, we'll be starting a caregiver support group actually in the fall, as well as individual therapy with our students, right? So if you want a one-on-one counselor, reach out to us. This is our number. You can call that same number for both, but we will be running this caregiver support group Mondays, 10 to 11:30 a.m. on Zoom. And so if you're interested, you'll have a chance to sign up at the end of today. You can let us know if you're interested in a group, if you're interested in individual therapy, or next slide, or if you're interested in contributing to research. So like I said, I study caregivers and how, we can, as couples, understand how to be supportive. So we're actually running a study on caregivers and their partners with dementia to figure out how recalling positive memories as a couple can help us feel better together as we adjust to a new diagnosis. So understanding the neural patterns, it's an EEG study, so we'll be doing some brain scan, but it's completely non-invasive. And so if you're interested in that and learning more about it, you can give us an email or sign up today at the end of today's call. So
Thank you so much, Bruna.
so
Thank you
that's
for
it. Thank you.
all of that information. And I want everyone to know, again, we work very closely with Bruna, her students. We all work together to fill in all the gaps. We want to look at everybody in a holistic approach as we try to be with you side by side in this journey. And so someone asked right off the bat, I want to answer, you don't need to be part of our agency to participate in these programs. We refer to each other. And so I just want to make note that we put in the chat a form of information about the resources Dr. Martin Kleins has shared. And so if you'd like to fill out that form, please do so. And then now I'm going to go to some of the questions in the chat and the Q&A box. Please remember to use that. Someone asked, can people outside of LA use this resource?
Excellent question. So anywhere in California is fine. So you can, as long as you're within the state of California, you're eligible. And that's just a requirement for licensure. So yes, great question.
And then I see people saying that the form is not opening up. We'll get our people behind the scenes to work on that and make sure that it's we either do it live or it's sent to you after the presentation. So don't worry, we'll make sure that you get connected and you're able to get access to that form. Our next question is, what can you do when the person you're caring for is extremely negative and always complaining? Anything you bring up, it turns into an argument and they become frustrated and angry.
Excellent question. So this is part of why we're studying thinking of positive memories. So I think bringing up memories from the past of things that you know they enjoy talking about, right? That can lighten the mood, it can change their emotion, and we hold on to memories of positive events well into, memory loss. It's one of these things that's immune in the brain. Like we hold on to those big events, weddings, births, like the things that those activities that like bring meaning. Also having them talk about groups they've been involved in. I had a patient who we would always talk about his work, and he had retired 40 years before, but he was still really happy to share with me what he was doing as an architect. So it's a way that you can kind of have a positive connection and help boost mood. Photos are actually also great. So I don't know if you've tried these things, but I would give them a try and see how it goes sharing memories and photos, or music. That's another one that's very healing. We've done some research on that as well. So picking a song from when the person was in their 20s usually is the sweet spot, so they can reminisce. So give those a try.
Great. And then what do you do when a loved one cannot see that they have dementia and are experiencing cognitive changes and memory loss?
Great question. So a lot of times, this is my scientist hat, data can be so powerful. And both in my personal life as well as my clinical professional life, I've seen the power of what an assessment can do. So having, a formal assessment done can sometimes be a way to increase that insight, sometimes not. But I would recommend, if you haven't done that, that would be maybe something to consider. And again, shameless plug for our services, but we can offer very low cost assessments at USC. So our students do those as well and are specialized in doing dementia screenings. So reach out if you need.
Great. And then someone asked, is counseling for a person in moderate stages of dementia who denies diagnosis, would that be helpful for them?
It can be, for sure. And I've led a lot of groups. The ones we're running at USC right now are focused on early memory loss, but in the past, when I was at the VA, we actually ran reminiscence groups. So, a lot of individuals with moderate stage would come, they would meet together and we would talk about memories or listen to music. We also had a music listening group. And a lot of times engaging in those positive activities or exercises together can be a way to build connection and social contact between individuals, even if some of them weren't fully able to participate fully. You could tell emotionally they were invested. So even if they were less chatty, maybe it's hard to communicate clearly. Later on, kind of going in moderate to more severe stages, that's still something that can affect mood. So yes, absolutely. Maybe less so for direct talk therapy if communication becomes a difficulty, but everyone can benefit from therapy. So yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Someone asked, are these services free or what is the charge?
You're 100% free, so you have to pay nothing. So even if you're Medicare eligible, it's cheaper than probably the copay would be to see a community provider, and the wait list is shorter usually. So
Great.
yeah, so it's something I like to offer because I know for many of you it might be cost prohibitive to have an individual therapist. So let us know if you need us.
Okay. Someone asked, where can we get help for difficult situations that may involve elder abuse or or conservatorship?
Ooh, this might be more for the other panelists than for me. But definitely if you're concerned about elder abuse of some sort, you can always consult with APS and they can connect you with resources. Is there a specific, I guess I would need more context about the question. But conservatorship questions, usually consulting with someone who's more of a legal expert than a therapy expert like me would be helpful. And it's really, really complicated and very state by state. So definitely, I think I would lean into care counselors to get more information. So I would reach out to your care counselor.
Mhm. Yes, thank you. And to also just further that, you can call Adult Protective Services. You can also consult with one of our counselors here that can walk you through the steps and connect you with someone that would help you with conservatorship. So I just want to let everyone know, if there's any questions that are not answered during our presentation or we don't get to, you can also always reach out to our agency where we will answer them or make sure we find the specialist in that area to answer your question. We have someone that has more of a comment, but I think it's important. They said, "Thank you so much for speaking about this. I found my mom drinking more wine over the last few months and realized it is grief. We've had some honest and sometimes hard conversations. I'm so grateful for Alzheimer's LA. We were able to find a therapist." Um, and I think that's helpful because I'm so grateful that you're here to talk about this, because someone who is in the early stages or maybe not dealing with this disease didn't realize how much the emotions are impacted. They can simply think it's a memory issue only, but all of the emotions and difficulties and behaviors that encompass this. It's so great to be able to have you all here and connected with Bruna and her team.
Absolutely. And I think drinking is so seldom talked about in medicine, like when you go in for a care visit. But it's important. It's one of the barometers of how we're doing, if we're engaging in substance use of any sort. Sometimes it's a way that we're trying to emotionally cope. And I think it's important not to shame whoever is doing this, right? So if you find out that a loved one is engaging in drinking or smoking a lot of weed to try to feel better. It's their own way of trying to cope, and we never do something unless it's helpful. So like we're doing this because we're trying to help ourselves, even if in the long run we're actually hurting our bodies or maybe even like putting ourselves to risks, right, of fall risk or not being as clear cognitively. So I think being able to talk about it, normalize it with them too, right? So paying it forward, everything that we normalize today applies to your loved ones too, and connect them with us if they need us.
Yes. We do have a 4-minute warning, so I'm going to try and get to a few more questions. We have any tips to minimize combativeness when speaking with or getting a person with early memory loss to perform new things like denture cleaning?
Mm-hmm. So we could do a whole talk just about this, but yes. So the way that you communicate what you're doing, right, really influences how your care partner is going to feel. So if you let them know in advance what we're about to do, right? So getting them set so they know what to expect and building a routine can be helpful. So talking through slowly, like we're going to do step one, like we're going to start doing some dental cleaning. And then explaining like what you're doing as you're doing it or helping them help. So like, again, that sense of control is huge. So the more agency you give to your loved one as you're doing care tasks, the more they're like contributing to it and less likely to get combative. Of course, we do our best, right? And sometimes even if we do those things, loved ones may still get combative and not want to engage in the tasks. So that's where also being creative about different ways to do the tasks or time of day, like when you're actually doing it. So a lot of things we do in therapy is figuring out like how to track and kind of problem solve and sleuth out what's the best time to do this task. In what way are you doing it? Or like who's doing the task, right? Is there someone who they really feel comfortable doing it with that's the best in the family? Or if you have a caregiver that comes into the home, what kind of tasks do they, appreciate doing with them versus not? So yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Great. And then someone asked, what is ACT?
Excellent question. So acceptance and commitment therapy, the AC&T. And the idea is to accept the emotions that we're feeling, even when they're tough, to then figure out what are the actions in our lives that we value the most, right? What are the core values that you live by and how you can commit to actions in your life that actually feed those values. So it's sort of like a lot of times we will not engage in certain actions unless we quote unquote have the time or feel a certain way. So like, yeah, I'll go to the gym when I have time, or I'll go to the gym when I feel good. And the truth is, a lot of times when we feel crummy and we go to the gym anyway, right? If we really care about being healthy, that feels really good after. And so we aren't letting our emotions drive our actions and instead mindfully choosing how to spend your time. So that's what acceptance and commitment therapy is about. And in the group that I'll be leading and with my students in the fall for the caregiver support group, we actually focus on tools from that so that you can prioritize what are your values and how you can do those, and how you can be aware of the tough emotions that come up without trying to push them away, right? So they go hand in hand. Doing things even if you feel tough emotions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, we've run out of time for questions, but I just want to acknowledge, I love that you guys are so active in the chat. I love that you're sharing resources amongst yourselves. That's what we do in so many of our groups. That's why it's so helpful to not only in social engagement and quality of life, but these groups, there's so many people kind of coming together to be able to share different resources and to be able to help one another. So I just love that you guys are all interactive. And again, if there's anything that we don't get to, we'll try to answer individually in the chat, or always reach out to one of our care counselors and we could discuss this. And so many of these questions that I'm seeing, we go over in our groups like Memory Club. We're able to have longer periods of time where we get to talk with some of these speakers. This is just a glimpse that we love to share with the community of what groups can look like when you join us, and to get some information out there to as many people as possible. So thank you so much, Dr. Martins Klein, to be here today.
So nice to meet you all virtually, and I hope that we'll see each other soon again. Thank you for all of your responses and being so active and open today. We're all in it together and we're here for you. So
All right, thank you.
I hope you have a lovely rest of the day and sending you my best. All right, take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So everybody, again, thank you so much. We're kind of at a midpoint in our program. We are going to take a 5-minute break. So please take a bathroom break, get some snacks or drinks. Our next section will be about our panelist for insight and inspiration, and then Dr. Trin. So I'll see you back here in 5 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. Now we are about to start our panel, and our panelists are participants that have actually gone through some of our support group, and they are people that are living with early memory loss. They are we have 2 people that are going to be with us that live independently, so they do live alone, and then we're going to have a couple that will be joining us today. First, it looks like we are going to have a poll We're going to ask everybody who is watching how many people are watching this webinar with you. You can choose yourself, 2 of you, 3 of you, or we have 4 or more people. We'll give everyone some time. All right. So it looks like most of you are watching this conference on your own. And we have some people that are with 2 people and 1 person with 4 or more. So welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. As I had said earlier, we're going to move into a very special part of our conference now. I'm going to be speaking to some of my group members, and first and foremost, I just want to thank them so much for taking the time to be with us, to be vulnerable. This takes a lot. Even as professionals, we get nervous to talk on this day. So to have them come here and share a piece of their story and heart, I'm so appreciative to them. So let's be mindful of having them here and give them our time. All right. So first, I'm going to start off. I'm going to ask Charles to come on screen. Let's give him a minute. Let's have him unmute. Can you do that for me, Charles?
Think so.
There we go. So, um, so let's just get started. This is usually to give you all a glimpse how we meet during our group times. And we see each other via Zoom. So I had the pleasure to be working with Charles for the last 6 months, but I'm going to give him a chance to tell us a little bit about himself.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My first name is Charles. My last name is Calhoun, Calhoun. I'm currently retired, live alone, 71 years old, and I've been diagnosed with the early stages of Alzheimer's, but I enjoy my life. I've managed to maintain my household alone for the most part and take care of myself, my finances rather. And I still very much appreciate the life that I have. I do most of the things that I always have done in my life, other than drive. Other than that, everything else is still intact as it was 30 years ago.
Thank you so much, Charles. Charles, can you share a little bit about maybe some of the initial symptoms you started to notice before you went to get a diagnosis?
Um, I did experience some forgetfulness. So I started using stickers, little notepads and things like that to remind me to do certain things. And that, for the most part, that was pretty much it.
Okay. Um, and was it difficult getting a diagnosis? What was your experience in that process?
No, and I got a referral, went through my primary, got a referral to get a referral to see a neurologist. And I didn't have any problems with that once at all. So it's pretty quick uh, um, event.
Okay. Thank you for that. Um, and share with me a little bit about what was your initial response when you heard that diagnosis? How did you feel?
Well, kind of bewildered. I was like, where did this come from? Because I didn't feel any difference physically or mentally. So yeah, it was like surprise. Yeah.
Mhm. And you could be real. Like I said, it's being you, and you're doing a great job. I just want you to know, as we had talked about, this is your time to share anything. So, um,
Well, the
how,
only other thing that I would say along with that was uh, surprised and confused.
sure,
Yeah.
absolutely, right. And at first, did you tell your family and friends about this diagnosis, or where did you turn to support when you found out you were going through this?
I didn't really share it with friends uh, that I recall. Uh, I did share it with a family member who is a attorney because I knew I was going to ask him to help me out with some things in the future, wills and last wishes and things of that nature. So, but he's the only one that I've shared it with. My daughter and my son. I apologize. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty fortunate to have someone in the family to help you out with that process. As we talked about earlier, Rebecca, it could be a really sticky situation. So grateful that you're able to have someone to do that with. And what changes, you mentioned not driving. So what changes have you made in your life since your diagnosis?
Besides not driving, I would probably say there have been very few changes that I've actually made that was significant. Um, I have a routine. I get up and go jog 4 or 5 times a week, and I prepare my food daily. I make sure I don't miss meals. I don't really have enough to miss a meal, so I I get those things done. So my life has stayed pretty much as it was before the diagnosis, other than the driving aspect of it.
Mhm. And how do you cope with new changes? I mean, you sharing been a few changes, but I know driving has been a difficult change for you. How are some of the things that you've been doing to cope with that?
Uh, well, I, I I do have a couple of alternatives. Through my insurance, I actually have access uh, to pick to what do you call them? Lifts, Lyft drivings or Uber driving, Uber pickups. So I have that through my insurance, and
Mhm.
I'm going through the process to learn how to currently right now with a very significant other person in my life to teach me how to actually schedule a Uber pickup. I haven't gotten there yet, but I'm in that direction.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like, even though you're living alone, and I see someone to the side a little bit, of having support, having that supportive system, and how that impacts all of these changes. Um, so what kind of support do you currently have as you navigate through this new process for yourself?
Well, the support that I get from uh, my significant other is I get mental, just the idea of being able to see each other and spend my life and my time with her is very important to me. Matter of fact, yeah, I don't think I could still go through what I'm going through without her. Yeah, just put it right there.
Yeah, that emotional connection is really important, and I can vouch for you too and say you're very active in our groups. You're in several groups right now, and I love seeing you just bond with the other members, and continue to do these great routines that you really stick to. If you could get any advice for professionals working with people impacted with early memory loss, what would that be?
Hmm. Well, um, what I would, one of the things that I missed that I don't think it ever came up when I was going through my making appointments, talking to my doctors and things of that nature, is none of them seemed to connect in that personal way that allowed them to talk to me, not so much about the nuts and bolts, so just about the idea of saying, hey, you know what? We know this is not an easy thing for you to go through, what you're going through right now, but you seem to have a good background, a good format of what you do daily. So keep those things in place because they're important. But also, if there's anything that we can do, let us know. But I didn't get those kind of things where it seemed like they wanted to connect to me as a person as opposed to a client. So I just felt, there should be something there, and it doesn't have to be extended.
Yeah. Yeah. Really meeting you where you're at as a person, right? Just
Yes,
checking in with you and who Charles is,
right.
right?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Um, and we mentioned the no driving. Someone had asked, if you could share, was it your choice not to drive, or was, or as we know, who whose choice was it not to drive?
If if I didn't have to make that choice or the choice wasn't made for me, I would still be driving because I love driving. So
Mhm.
it was made professionally.
Yeah. So I wanted to mention that when you are given a diagnosis of dementia, the doctors report it to the DMV, for those that do not know that. So that's why I bring that up, because the not driving wasn't part of Charles's plan. But for those that didn't know, it goes kind of hand in hand. And he's been having to navigate that. So it is very big of him sharing that he is learning to use Uber, and the health insurance companies are providing Uber services now, not just access, so that he can attend his doctor's appointments. Well, I want to thank you, Charles, for being here today. Everybody, we have just a short glimpse of into everyone's life a little bit. Any final thoughts that you want to leave people with?
Well, I would say is that I still enjoy my life. It's still a full life. And as long as I can continue down that road, I don't really have any significant complaints because I feel blessed that I can still do and participate in the lifestyle that I have.
Okay. Thank you so much, Charles. And I'll catch you with what groups.
Um, Alzheimer's of Los Angeles.
Yes.
Yeah. And I believe that's it. And Opeka,
Yes.
Opeka
Yes.
of America.
One of our partners. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Mhm.
Thank you, Charles. Next, I'm gonna ask Paula, Neil and David Neal to unmute themselves, and we'll check in with them.
You can do this. Let's do this. I think this is Paula.
Can you hear us, Cassandra?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you.
I
All
didn't
right.
hear your question.
Oh, so I was just making sure that you guys were unmuted and wanted to bring you on. If you both can introduce yourselves. Yes, thank you.
My name is David. I was diagnosed 2 years ago. I thought it was a gut punch, but the the test that I went through was very impersonal. When you get that kind of news, I know we talked about this yesterday, but it's very cold. At least the place that we went to, it was very cold, very structured. It was very matter of fact, and there was no compassion. And that set me off. And I'm still obviously not real having good memories of the diagnosis. You know, it made me upset, and I'm still upset, but I'm trying to get a grip on it. And I did give up driving on my own. And I just got that letter about 2 weeks ago from the state about the driving. So that took 2 years for them to notify me. But I, just like Charles, I gave it up on, I donated my truck and I
To Habitat.
yeah, I gave it to Habitat for Humanity. And it's been a tough thing to have to give up, but it is what it is.
Thank you, Dave. And yes, I just want to really highlight and congratulate Dave. Um, he was someone that didn't want to participate in our group in the beginning. And I shared with him yesterday how much he has been an impact to the group, and a big decision of donating his car to Habitat for Humanity. And as a male, to be able to share about how he's feeling in a raw and real way. And so thank you, Dave. Thank you for being here and doing this. This is big.
And thank
I
you for giving me the ear yesterday, because I really was very emotional, but um, it comes and goes.
Yeah. And like I said yesterday, I'm going to be here in the good days and the bad days, and we're doing this together.
There you
So
go.
thank you for that. Um, I wanted to ask, what changes have you made in your lifestyle in regards to your diagnosis?
Um, we started walking when COVID hit, and because there's nothing else to do at the time. I have lost 100 pounds, which was good for my health.
Wow.
Um, we we live in Simi Valley, so we walk up to the Reagan Library, and then we go off to this mountain called Mount McCoy, and there's a cross on there. If you've ever been to Simi, you can see it quite. So it's part on asphalt, part on a dirt road. So there's a lot of pretty flowers, and Paula listens to books while we walk, and I take pictures of flowers and things, and I stack rocks and make little monuments, like monoliths and stuff. And it's a time for both of us to have time apart, but not physically apart. Um,
Mhm.
it's good to both for both of us to have time to ourselves, even though we're walking together. Um, uh, I'm in counseling with a psychologist. We've gone through several of them. Not that I left them. They said they've taken me as far as they could. So I'm with a new guy who takes a lot of notes. He sees me for the first half of the hour, and then he brings Paula in. Um, I'm still a little raw, angry. I didn't realize how much of impact that this diagnosis has given me, because in my opinion, I may have had it 10 years before the medical community told me I had it. Paula noticed the changes in me way before I did. Um, and she's the one that pushed for a diagnosis, and let's get going with the medical field, and let's try to find out and make the changes that we have to do. We still travel a lot. We're going to Colorado and New Mexico next week to visit Paula's sister um, and their children.
On a cruise.
Yeah, and we're going on a cruise. Yeah, when we get back, we got about a week, and then we're going on a cruise to Nova Scotia, Greenland, and Iceland. And later on this year, we're going to cruise each one of the Great Lakes. And yeah, so we're enjoying our company with each other. We like to travel. Um, just keep busy, you know, like some of the things we talked about yesterday, you know, you have to you got, like I said here, like in this questionnaire that we had, it says, what helps you cope with the new changes in your life? And I wrote down my spousal support, keeping busy, listening to music, have hobbies, family, friends, and travel. That's how I've been coping with this change in my life.
I love it. Thank you, David. And I love that you really highlighted your traveling. I love hearing when you and Paula come back, and that's a misconception that people think, you know, I'm not going to travel, it's going to be scary, or you know, with these changes. And I love the way you and Paula continue to do that. Continue in doing what you love. Um, and so I also want to bring in Paula at this time too, as a care partner, to share a little bit on your perspective. You know, we talked about you guys are such a great partnership, and I love seeing your love. How as a partner, you navigating with David? What are some of the things you want to give insights to other care partners?
Um, I just think that it's a difficult thing to accept. It's a difficult thing to see your partner go through what they're going through. Um, it's an emotional roller coaster, not only for them, but for you, because not only every day, but every portion of the day may be different. They may wake up really in a good place, and then, you know, later on in the day, it gets a little messy, is what I'll say. But, you know, it's hard for I think caregivers to watch it happen. You do the best you can. Um, it's important to I think for caregivers to have support too. And that's the one thing that Alzheimer's Los Angeles and the memory group did for me, because Cassandra could probably tell you my first three, probably maybe more meetings, all I did was cry. I just cried. I just felt so overwhelmed. And having other people that are going through this, and the support of those people, and the ladies, just their little comments and encouragement made all the difference in the world. It's hard to hear your partner say, I'm disappearing, because that's how they feel. They're disappearing. And so you need to reassure them, and to spend time with them. And what is it that they want to do? Like Dave does an art day. Every week he picks a day, and all he does is his own art. He does his art and I do something else. And he doesn't have any to-do list or anything like that. But I think, as Charles said, because Charles is in our group, you know, I think professionals need to be so aware of how people are feeling. They're afraid, they're scared. You need to treat them with more respect and compassion. And that's what Alzheimer's Los Angeles does. It's so important that they don't lose that dignity, because they're still a person, and they're not just a disease.
I love it, Paula. You're making me emotional, because I can remember when you came and you said, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And you looked to another member who said, you know, you're so strong. And I said, Paula, one day you are going to be able to share your insight. And you here today, you're going to impact so many other people hearing your advice and your tips and tools. And I'm going to quote Vicky when I say, and I love it when you show up with your long hair and your head up high and just
Hey, Vicky.
looking fabulous. I thank you so much for sharing your heart today. And
Thank you.
I love it. And I want to give Dave the opportunity to share his final thoughts that he shared with me yesterday, because I thought they were so beautiful.
Okay, and I wrote this down in a matter of minutes, so it's kind of all over the place. But anyway, I wrote down, stay alert, beware of when you are going down the rabbit hole, find hobbies, listen to music, try to remove yourself from bad days as soon as possible for you and your support people. Take notes. Know that some days are going to be good, normal, take it in. Some days are bad. Navigation through both are necessary to keep you moving forward.
Mhm. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Uh, I Again, I'm just so blessed to have you guys in our group, and we'll see you in Grad Club. Thank you for being here today.
We're blessed to have you, Cassandra.
Yes.
We love you. Thank you so much. And we
And-
love our group.
Yes, Charles.
David, I look forward to seeing you soon, man.
All right.
Take care.
I love it. The hair is flowing, girl.
Love you, girl.
See, I love it. This is we're like family, and I hope that you all can feel it through this screen, because these people mean so much to me. So, thank you. Come join us whenever you're feeling lonely, or you think that you're the only one going through this, or no one's gonna understand you. You're not, and you're gonna be really surprised of the great people you get to meet through groups.
Only
Thank
the
you.
best.
And so now I want to invite Reverend Carolyn to come on. We're going to spend some time with her, and I'm just going to give her an opportunity to come share a little bit about herself. She's came in kind of late into our panel, as she had just started one of our groups. She's not through with our group, but I love her insight, and I love the way she shares her experience. So thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Reverend Carolyn Habersham, and I currently pastor First Presbyterian Church in Los Angeles. I am thankful to have this opportunity, and I shared with Cassandra, one of the reasons is because people think that when we're ministers and pastors, God just loves us so much, we have no problems. And so I wanted to come on because I wanted people to know that, yes, we are human. And I was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment after having a surgery that went 5.5 hours longer than they had anticipated. And when I came out of the surgery, I've had many surgeries. So when I came out of this surgery, I noticed that I keep saying it was brain fog, but it was almost as if somebody was holding something over my brain and I just couldn't think. It was debilitating. I paid attention to it because I've had brain fog before after surgery, but this wasn't going away. And I waited actually 9 weeks. I didn't say much to people. I just kept paying attention. And I was able to call a friend of mine's son who is an anesthesiologist. And I called him and said, here's what's going on. And because of the closeness of nature in our relationship, he said, I'm going to tell you up front, this is not reversible. You need to get to your doctor as soon as possible. And so, I had done some research. The research I had done said exactly what he said. It wasn't that I was shocked. It was just that I never would have wanted to hear it. And hearing it, fortunately, I have an amazing primary care physician. And I was able to get in immediately to see him, share with him what was happening and what I'd been told. And he said to me, we're going to walk through this together. He said, the My challenge is you need a good neurologist, and I don't know how to get you one because the insurance doesn't really have the kind of neurologist you need. But we're going to walk through this together. And so what I said to him that day is, I'm pretty sure they're going to come after my license. So let me do this. I will promise you that I will go home and give away my car. But I've had enough challenges with diseases, cancer, whatever, that takes so much from me. I want the privilege of giving up and it not taking it from me. So if you will allow me that, I promise you, I will not drive again. And he said, I trust you. Because I knew that they were going to have to go to DMV, but I wanted to get one up on DMV before they came after me. And so that was my choice. I called my cousin and said, you might want to come get this almost like real new car out of my driveway because I might forget what promise I made if it sits here too long. But the other thing was my dad expired from Alzheimer's disease. And we couldn't get my dad to stop driving, and he had a bad accident. He survived the accident, but I don't ever want the thought over my head that would have had an accident, hurt someone, and I knew I couldn't live with that. And so so those were my initial symptoms. I then went to a neurologist who was nice. Nice doesn't always mean that's what I need. He kept saying to me, well, maybe your brain injury will heal itself. I said, I've done some research. I have seen no data to support that. Do you have any? He said, oh, no, I don't have no data to support it. He said, well, why don't we wait and see? And I said, are we waiting to see if I will never remember my grandkids? Are we waiting to see if I'm going to die? Or are we just waiting to see if I will wither away? What are we waiting for? Because I'm not clear. And he said, well, I can do a test. He did the test. It came back. Yeah, you're right. There's an issue. Really. This is what I have to deal with for a neurologist, who clearly is not interested in my care. And so I'm having to fight to get health care and to go to meetings if it had not been for Alzheimer's LA. I don't know where I'd be because I got more information from Alzheimer's LA, got connected with information. Cassandra and the groups have been just amazing and more than helpful. But when you don't have healthcare professionals who care about who you are, and they are the specialists, and you're talking about your brain, and they don't want to treat you, it's beyond anything that words have. And every day I'm living with shifts in my life. So when I went in, I told him, I've lost all of my banking, which I have no idea where it is. I lost my credit cards. I eventually found my credit cards in a place that would not make sense to me or anybody else, Humpty Dumpty or anybody, as to why they would be in that place. So I know I've got a problem. And he's still saying, well, it may not be that bad. So to have to fight the healthcare professionals that your insurance sends you to know that there are other types of help, but you're not privy to them. You don't have access to them. It's crippling at best.
Thank you. And thank you for all of that. I really, again, I love the way you express yourself and are able to advocate. With that said, I know something that's been important to you. How have you told your family and friends or those around you that what you're going through?
So on January 1st, I decided to start a new family tradition. And because, particularly in the African American family, we don't have tough conversations. We don't have them, we don't know how. And because I served as a chaplain in several hospitals, I know that in the African American community, we don't have the conversations. So I invited family and friends over and said, I'm doing this because we've got to change what we do. And so I'm sharing with you what's going on with me because number one, I want you to know. Number two, I do not want you talking behind my back to each other, and nobody is talking to me. I need to know everything that you see going on because I need to tell my medical team. And I may not be so in tune that I know what's going on. And so it is important to me that we begin having tough conversations and we normalize those conversations because it's a part of life. And so I shared everything and they said, well, what do you need? And I'm like, at this point, I don't know, but let's stay in contact continually so that I can say what's going on, what's happening. I had to stop cooking. I like to cook, it's a form of therapy. But if I leave the kitchen, I will not remember that I'm cooking. And rather than have my house burned down, I decided it was easier to go toward an air fryer. I can turn that thing on, turn it off, and it makes the most perfect bacon in the world. So I'm happy. So I just had to find ways to live that did not make it hard for the family. So like they can't talk to you, they can't do this. And was empowering for me because empowerment for me is really important.
Thank you. I love it. I love the way that you share about how to keep your power and autonomy through this process in every step of the way. What changes, you alluded to some of those changes, but what changes have you made in your life since the diagnosis?
Everything, everything. One of the things that I did learn for myself and knowing my own body is early in the morning is when I'm better. And so early in the morning, I get up, I go for a walk to get the endorphins going. I come back, I work. And I do that until until I feel myself tired. And I am committed to not overtaxing and overtiring my brain. So if I feel myself getting tired, I just shut everything down regardless of where I am. I may want to continue, but I just shut it down because I've discovered that if I am good to my brain, it'll be better to me. And so I've had to change everything. I'm having the conversations about giving up paying my bills. I've paid them for many, many, many years now. It was heartbreaking to get a couple of emails from some of my creditors that said, hey, did you forget to pay us this month? And I'm like, I paid my bills. What they talking about? Well, I don't know who I paid, but they didn't get paid. And I probably did a lot more shopping that month because I thought I had extra money. Okay. So when I recognized that, I said, okay, put some systems in place. You can do this. Well, this month it came up again. I didn't make the mark. But I did know what happened is I moved where I was working to another place. I now know I can't do that because it interrupted my flow. And so I am having to give up some autonomy, some of my independence, and claim it in other places. So just because I give it up in one place doesn't mean I can't claim it someplace else in a way that's healthy. So that's been very difficult for me.
Mhm. Thank you. You shared some of the things that have been changing. What are some of the positives that you found in knowing your diagnosis early?
I am one who believes that if you know things early, you can address them early. So knowing it early for me means that I have greater hope, because any disease that can be addressed early will always bring some hope. Being with Alzheimer's LA and getting the education has helped me to navigate a lot of things also. And it's helped me to know that there's more hope than I even knew. That the new meds that are out, new modalities and all of those types of things. When Dr. Kaiser said, if you have this diagnosis, this is the best time for you to have the diagnosis. Well, I grabbed that and said, okay, let's go with the best. Then, so yeah.
Mhm. Thank you. And I love that you brought up and you bring it up in group is your awareness of when your brain is tired, that you don't push it and you take breaks. Because again, I really like the way we're able to gain insight by you describing these feelings, because sometimes once we get to a later stage, a caregiver will notice, I'm noticing the more agitated in the afternoon, or if we do a lot, they're sleeping, are they sleeping too much? But I love that you say, no, your body's telling you, I need a break right now. My
Right.
brain has had too much and I'm not going to push it right now. So, again, I really enjoy the way you're able to explain for us the symptoms we see on the outside and what it feels like going on the inside. Um, do you have any advice for professionals working with people impacted by early memory loss?
We are human beings. Yes, I do have advice. If you're going to be in this field, be in it because it's a place you were called to be, not just because it gives you money. Because when people approach us, we can usually tell it's because they like the salary that they get, not so much because they care about who we are. And if you know you're dealing with a person who has memory loss, don't ask me what I ate yesterday. I don't know what I ate today. And you ought to know better than to ask me something like that. And so to understand that this is a disease that causes our life, for me, it's caused my life to shift every day. Every day I'm discovering something new that I've got to incorporate or whatever. I don't need someone who is not going to approach me as a human being and does not have compassion. They don't want to poke the bear with me because it might not be nice.
Thank you. I'm seeing a lot of head nods in the background and smiles because it's like they're saying, "Go, Carolyn, you're speaking for us right now. You say it." And before we say goodbye to everybody, I want to ask Carolyn, do you have any final comments or something you really want to leave the audience with?
Hope and teamwork makes the dream work. I have had to be very conscious about beginning to build a team around me, because I don't no one person can be my team and I don't want to wear everybody out, but I'm building a team to help me, because they're just who has the gift to do this, do this, do this. And hope. I hold on to hope because the support groups are what brings me hope. Alzheimer's LA and the counseling brings me hope. And I choose to find hope in everything that I do and where I go. This is not a hopeless disease, and I don't think anything is, but I have to know how to navigate it. And I need team members who will help me to do that. And not having unrealistic expectations. It is what it is. I have to live in those parameters. No, it's not reversible. Live in it, feel it, move in it. But I intend to live my best life, loving my way through life, loving God through life, loving everybody I come in contact with through life, because those are the things that connect with my brain that help to bring healing and hope to the brain.
Thank you so much. Oh, I love you all. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for sharing. I'm just so honored to be able to work with you all and get to hear and share in your beautiful lives and stories. So thank you. I will see you all in our groups, and I want to now bring on my partner, Ziamara Lara. She is our other care counselor in our early stage programs. She also is my co-leader in the Memory Club. We work hand in hand. We are a team of two under our early stage program that is just growing every day. And we're so happy that it's growing, because that means people are getting to us sooner. And I see in the chat, everyone's asking, how do I get to these groups? How do I, get connected? And so she's going to come on and share a little bit about that. But again, I just want to encourage you all to reach out to us with any question, with anything. We would love to work with you and your families in this journey.
Yes, thank you, Cassandra. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yamara Lara. I am a care counselor in the early stage services department. I would like to take this opportunity to highlight some of the programs and services that we have available. Whether someone has received a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or a related dementia, we're here to help you. We work closely with you one-on-one. We help individuals and their care partners create an individualized plan. We answer questions about early stage and young onset dementia. We provide referrals to other services and supportive programs in the community. We provide appropriate educational materials and event information. And I have the pleasure of working closely with individuals and their families. Next slide. I know some of you have had a lot of questions about what is Memory Club. Memory Club is an 8-week support program for individuals with early stage memory loss and their families. Some of the topics covered during Memory Club include learning about communication and coping strategies, practical planning for the future, including legal and safety, understanding the disease process, including emotional and psychological responses to the diagnosis. A pre-assessment is required in order to be part of Memory Club. The next Memory Club will be taking place in the fall of this year. Next slide. And lastly, we have a connections group. It is a support group for people living alone with memory loss. The support group offers resources for problem solving, support, and information. The group meets on Tuesday mornings between 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. A pre-assessment is also required in order to be part of the Connections group. The Connections group is currently open and is taking in new members. I look forward to hearing from all of you on how we can further support you on how to navigate this disease. Thank you so much for your time, I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Xiomara. And yes, as we have shared, any questions you have, we are here to answer you. We're going to have our contact information at the end, so you can reach out to us individually or via email. The Memory Club will start off or back up again in the fall. We have them 4 times a year. So I just wanted to make sure, I know a lot of people are very interested in that class. So even if you'd like to be on that wait list, we always have a running wait list, and we can work individually with you and make sure you get connected to the correct group. Now I'd like to take the time. We are going to have our final speaker of today, and it is Dr. Trin, and he is the Chief Medical Officer of the Healthy Brain Clinic. He's a well-known expert in speaking on preventative health, including brain health. He maintains a very active schedule. He is always at some speaking event, and we are so fortunate to have him close to our agency. He loves to speak from the heart, and he loves to be really interactive with everybody. So he's going to come on, and he's asked everyone to just go ahead and put your questions in the chat. This is going to be very informal, interactive, and he wants to hear from you all. I know we heard a lot of things about doctors sharing that they didn't feel like they cared or saw him. I can tell you that this doctor is going to see you, and he makes it his passion to let you know that he cares. And again, he speaks from his heart, and he wants to hear from you and interact with you today. So thank you, Dr. Trin, for being with us today.
Thank you for the invite. Can you hear me okay? If
Yes.
Lynn likes my bow tie, it's the only time you'll see it. It's in a picture. I want to make sure that everyone knows how to use the chat box. Type in yes if type in yes in the chat box, just so I know you know how to use the chat box. Cool. All right. Nice, nice. Okay. Good. Yeah, I don't do lectures as far as PowerPoints and things of that sort. I would love to have a discussion with you, and so that I can hear what your concerns are, what your questions are, and what is on your mind when it comes to Alzheimer's and dementia and early diagnosis and things of that sort. I'm located in Long Beach, and we're at the Healthy Brain Clinic is what we're called, healthybrainclinic.com. I am a medical researcher, so we do clinical trials specific to Alzheimer's disease, and most of the meds that you may hear about or have heard in relating to Alzheimer's treatment, I may have touched it one way or another in clinical trials in the last few years, whether it's Leqembi, lecanemab, donanemab, and the others that are in the pipeline. So I can certainly answer some questions if you have questions on those medications. How many of you guys know that in Los Angeles County and in Orange County, Alzheimer's is either the number 2 or number 3 cause of death? Did you know that? Type yes or no. I'm curious on your awareness of how significant it is. Yes, depending on which statistics you look at, Los Angeles, I've seen in one of the statistics was that in LA, Alzheimer's is the number 2 cause of death in Los Angeles County. In Orange County, Alzheimer's is noted to be the number 3 cause of death. Let me ask you this. What is the number 1 cause of death? Do you guys know? What is the number 1 cause of death? Any thoughts on that? Let's see. Okay, you guys are good. Yes, the number 1 cause of death is heart attacks, right? Number 1 cause of death is heart attacks. And that's number one cause of death in like the United States, right? What is the number two cause of death? Any thoughts? What is the number two cause of death? I see alcohol. I'm seeing a lot of cancers. Yes. So at least in Orange County and also around LA County, cancer is the number two cause of death. When we're talking about diseases, some of you guys wrote like car accidents and stuff like that. That does contribute. But when it comes to like health diseases, right? Cancer is the number two. And right behind cancer is Alzheimer's. It's pretty crazy because these are statistics that are very significant, but nobody really talks about, especially when it comes to Alzheimer's with that. And so let me ask you guys this. When it comes to the number one cause of death, which is heart attacks, what do we do to look for and to hope to prevent heart attacks? What kind of testing do we do? What kind of evaluation do you get to see if you're at risk for a heart attack? Yes, you do a blood pressure. Yes, you can do a stress test. Cholesterol check, absolutely, right? High cholesterol is a risk factor. High blood pressure is a risk factor. EKGs are often done to look for any abnormal rhythms. Echocardiograms are also done, ultrasound to look at your heart structure. And so angiograms if needed. So there are a lot of things that we do to look for those who are at risk for heart attacks, right? We check your cholesterol, we check your blood pressure, we check to see if you have diabetes because it increases that risk of heart attack. C-reactive protein, yes, is a blood test where that measures inflammation. And if that inflammation level is high, it is an independent risk factor for heart attacks. And so we do a lot to look to see if you're at risk for heart attack. And then we do everything we can to prevent that heart attack, right? If your blood pressure is high, we lower it. If your cholesterol is high, we try to lower it. We tell you to exercise and things of that sort. So that's heart attacks, number one cause of death. And we do a lot for prevention. Let me ask you this. Number two cause of death, cancer. What are you guys doing these days to look for cancer, to detect cancer, to prevent cancer? What are you guys doing these days for cancer evaluation? All right, what kind of screen? Okay, I see pap smears, yes. Mammograms, yes. Breast cancer. CT scan of the lungs, yes. Cancer markers. For prostate cancer, we do prostate exams, PSA tests. Skin checks, dermatology screening, yes. Colonoscopy for colon cancer, yes, yes, yes. So when it comes to the number two cause of death in the United States, right? When it comes to diseases and things of that sort, we do a lot to look for the risk factors, the cause, and we talk about prevention. So colonoscopies for colon cancer, mammograms for breast cancer, prostate exams, PSAs for prostate cancer evaluation, skin checks, right? To look for skin cancer and things of that sort. CT scan of the chest if you're indicated for it to look for lung cancer. So let me ask you this. Let me ask you guys this. What are we doing today to screen for the number three cause of death, which is Alzheimer's? What are we doing today at the doctor's office? So let me ask you another question. How many of you guys, and answer yes or no, how many of you get a yearly memory test from your doctor? Yes or no? How many of you have a yearly memory test for your doctor? Wow. Wow. Take a look at the chat box, guys. It's 90% no's. It's 90% no's. What is the problem with that? What is the problem? Why is it that we do everything to look for heart disease, the #1 cause of death? We do everything to try to detect cancer. And when it comes to Alzheimer's, absolutely nothing of significant. Is that not a problem? We're not even looking for the diagnosis. So I want to share with you, this is called the Early Memory Loss Conference, right? This is called the Early Memory Loss Conference. Nobody's even looking for early memory loss. Is that not a problem? And it's a significant problem because we all, I think, agree that the earlier you find a problem, the more options you have than finding it later, right? The earlier you detect the problem, the more options you have than to find it later. And I'll share with you a few reasons why Alzheimer's nobody's looking for. I'll show you a few reasons. First of all, when it comes to early memory loss, if your memory loss is really mild, right? Not severe, not significant, what do you normally blame it on when your memory loss is really mild? We blame it on getting older. Absolutely. We blame it on stress. We blame it on just simply age. So as we are blaming it on age, we are missing an opportunity for an early diagnosis. Is that not right? Right? If we are blaming it on age, we're missing an opportunity for an early diagnosis. And it's not just the patients. I have to tell you, many of the physicians also blame memory loss on getting older. How many of you guys have told your doc, you know, I'm starting to forget things? And oftentimes the doc says, well, maybe it's because you're 70 or 80 years old, right? Don't worry about it. Or sometimes they say it's normal with that. So it goes both ways, right? Both patients and doctors tend to blame memory loss on aging. And so it's a problem. Lynn says there's a lot of denial. Absolutely. It is a problem with that. The other problem is this. How many minutes do you get to spend with your primary care doctor on average? Susan, 15 minutes. Christine, 7, 8 minutes, 10 minutes. Oh man, Sherry gets 30 minutes. Wow. On average, a patient gets about 10 minutes with their primary care doctor, right? If you have more than 10 minutes, you got a great doc, right? Or they're not super busy. With, but on average, it's around 10 minutes with a primary care doc. And so in 10 minutes, and I'm speaking as a primary care physician. I was a primary care physician for almost 20 years, guys. And so the problem is in the 10, 15 minutes I get with you, right? I'm refilling meds. I'm discussing what you're here for. We're looking over your lab results. We're putting in consultation requests and referrals. And by the time you're ready to even talk about your memory, time's up, right? The next patient is like waiting already. And so you can see that this issue with Alzheimer's is a systems issue. The system doesn't allow even time to talk about it. The doctors don't have time, and the patients blame it on aging as they get older as part of their memory loss. This is why the death rate of Alzheimer's is going up, whereas the death rate from heart attacks is going down, right? The death rate from strokes is going down. The death rate from many health conditions is going down, including cancer. But the death rate for Alzheimer's is going up, right? Over the last 10 years, I've seen statistics where the death rate for Alzheimer's has gone up 100% or more. And so I got a question here. What is the brain? Great question. What is the brain? So, so let me give you a little bit of science behind Alzheimer's in the time that we have. And I know we don't have a ton of time. I often go to churches actually and give these 3-hour seminars all the time on Saturdays at different churches where we have enough time to talk about it. But in Alzheimer's, how many of you guys have heard of the Alzheimer's plaque? Yes or no? How many of you guys have heard of the Alzheimer's plaque? Great. Most of you guys have heard the Alzheimer's plaque. Educated group here. What is the name of that plaque? What is the name of that plaque? Anyone know the name of that plaque? Amyloid. Yes. You guys getting all this info from Alzheimer's Los Angeles? This is great. We have a very educated group here. Yes, amyloid plaque. What's the other protein besides the amyloid that's associated with Alzheimer's? Not a trick question. What is the? Okay. Tau. Yes. TAU. So there's two proteins associated with Alzheimer's, right? Debbie says from you, Dr. Trin. Yeah. So there's two proteins associated with Alzheimer's. The first one is the plaque. We call that beta amyloid plaque, right? And the second protein is the tau protein. We call it the tau tangles, where it tangles up the brain, right? And so in Alzheimer's, you have plaques and you have tangles, amyloid and tau. So let me ask you this. By the time a patient with Alzheimer's have their very first memory loss, in the most mildest of stages, right? The mild stages of Alzheimer's, the first memory loss, how long has the amyloid plaque been building up in the brain? How long has the amyloid plaque been building up in the brain? Okay, I'm getting 10 years. I'm getting 20 years. I'm getting 5 years, 15 years. Nice. This is like the lotto, right? Everyone's throwing in their numbers with that. So by the time a patient with Alzheimer's have their very first memory loss, the Alzheimer's plaque, the amyloid, the beta amyloid, has been building up for around 20 years. 20 years of plaque buildup before the first memory loss. Okay. Great question. What is amyloid, right? So first memory loss is here. Count back 20 years. That's when the first plaque starts to build. It builds up quietly. It builds up slowly. There are no symptoms. Your memory is still perfect, right? Until that first memory loss. It's been there for 20 years. So keep that in mind. What is the Alzheimer's amyloid plaque? Let me tell you the story of the plaque, okay? The plaque does not show up overnight. There is a process. There is a process where that plaque is being born. And it starts first with a protein called the amyloid precursor protein, APP, amyloid precursor protein. That's not an abnormal protein. It's a normal protein. It's part of the cell wall, right? So your brain cells, right? Every cell has a cell wall that surrounds the cell. So the amyloid precursor protein lives in the cell wall and it has its duties and function. It's completely normal. So based on 3 different factors, your genetics, your environment, and your lifestyle, okay? Based on 3 different factors, your genetics, your environment, and your lifestyle, this amyloid precursor protein gets spliced up. It gets cut up in different directions. And it can go in one of 2 directions when it gets spliced up, okay? It can go in one of 2 directions when it gets spliced up. The first direction where it can get spliced up, it creates what's called not beta amyloid, but alpha amyloid. And alpha amyloid is normal, it's fine, it's not anything dangerous. The other direction where it can go is where it gets spliced up and it becomes the baby, the precursor to the amyloid plaque. We call that beta amyloid. You guys understand so far? Type in yes if you're following me. Type in yes if you're following me. I want to make sure I'm not losing anyone, right? And so the beta amyloid, first, as a baby, it's a single peptide. We call it a monomer. Mono means one, right? So it becomes a monomer as a single peptide. It's not the plaque yet. It's still in liquid state, right? The soluble state. And what happens is that over time, two of these monomers get together and they become a dimer. Di means two. And over time, these dimers and monomers get together and they become what we call oligomers. Oligo is Oligo, oligomers, right? And at the oligomer state, it's still not a plaque yet. It's still in the soluble liquid state. But at the oligomer state is where it starts to become toxic to the brain cells, right? It starts to become toxic to the brain cell. And the oligomers combine together and it becomes what we call, and we're going kind of deep in the woods here, right, with Alzheimer's, but I want to give you a little bit of the science. So the oligomer means several. Several of the monomers bind together of these beta amyloids. They become oligomers, and then the oligomers connect and they become what's called protofibrils. The protofibril is also in the soluble state. It's not a plaque yet, and it's also toxic to the brain, right? Leads to brain cell death. The protofibrils get together, creates what's called these strands called fibrils, amyloid fibrils. And when the amyloid strands get together, it becomes the Alzheimer's plaque. So there are multiple steps to create this plaque, right? As you can see. And it takes 20 years of plaque buildup with that. So are you following me so far of how a plaque was created? Does that make sense to you, right? Of how the plaque was created. The little different steps. And at the plaque level is where it no longer is soluble in liquid state. At the plaque level, it becomes solidified, it becomes solid, right? You can see it on an autopsy of the brain. You can see the plaque. So Christine says at the age of 56, it could have started. Yeah, it could start at any age. Think back of your first memory loss with Alzheimer's, subtract 20 years, it starts to build up then. Okay. Now, let me share a little bit about the tau protein, because you all heard about the tau tangles and all that. How is tau different, right, than the plaque? So tau is a protein that lives inside of the brain cell. Okay, tau is a protein that lives inside of the brain cell, whereas the plaque lives outside of the brain cell. And a tau protein isn't necessarily an abnormal protein. Okay, it's actually a normal protein that is part of what I call the rebars that creates and helps with the structure of the brain cell, right? Kind of like your house, right? Your house, when they build a house, they make the rebars that creates the structure of that house. So the tau protein is part of the rebars that makes the structure of the cell. And these rebars we call microtubules is the name of these rebars. Okay, microtubules. And I'll create a little picture thing for you guys and I'll email it to you guys so that you can see it. Sounds good? And so in Alzheimer's, what happens is that the tau protein, which is normal, it gets phosphorylated. There's a phosphate group that binds to the tau protein in Alzheimer's disease. And when the phosphate group binds to the tau protein, what happens is that it knocks the tau outside of the rebar. It breaks down the rebars so that the structure of the cell of the brain cell becomes unstable, and these tau proteins, they start to get folded up in a messy way. It gets tangled. And as it gets tangled, it destroys the brain cell from the inside. It kills the brain cell from the inside. That's why we call it tau tangles. And as a result of that, the brain cells die. Does that make sense to you guys so far? The difference between the plaque and the tangles. So in a healthy brain, we each have about 100 billion brain cells, right? Jim says sort of makes sense. In a healthy brain, we each have about 100 billion brain cells. Our brain cells are always connecting, they're always talking, they're always chatting with each other. Every time you're thinking, your brain cells are connecting and talking. Every time you have a feeling, your brain cells are connecting and chatting. And every memory that you have is a pattern of brain cells connecting and chatting. Does that make sense so far? Every thought, every feeling, every memory is simply brain cells connecting and chatting. They're communicating, they're talking to each other. Does that make sense to you guys? Type in yes if that makes sense. I want to make sure I haven't lost anyone. Okay, good. So what happens is the Alzheimer's plaque, what it does is that it gets in the way between two brain cells trying to communicate, right? The plaque gets in the way between two brain cells trying to talk to one another. And when the brain cells can't talk to one another, it becomes a problem, doesn't it? And if there was only a little bit of plaque, building up many years ago, no big deal. The brain cells kind of get around to that, and your memory is only, your memory problem's mild, forgetting a name, forgetting a word, just mild stuff, right? But over time, as the plaque builds up, it overwhelms the brain's ability to talk, to communicate. And when brain cells can't talk to one another, we call that memory loss. Right? When brain cells can't talk to one another, we call that memory loss. Does that make sense to you guys so far? Okay. I mean, there's so much more we can talk, right? About we have like half an hour left. So I'm going to try to put things together for you. Right? So memory loss is when brain cells can't talk. And the issue is this. My first question to you is, can we detect the plaque? Can we detect the plaque? Right? What can we do to find plaque? What can we do to, how do you know if you have plaque in your brain, the Alzheimer's plaque, right? The amyloid, the beta amyloid. How do you know? Okay, I have an educated group here. I have an educated group here. Now, if you were to ask me this question 15 to 20 years ago, how do I find, the Alzheimer's plaque? 15 to 20 years ago, I would say the way to confirm it was autopsy. Right? Autopsy was the way to confirm Alzheimer's 15 to 20 years ago. And so it wasn't a great prevention program back then because we had to wait till you're gone and autopsy your brain and all that. But in the last 10 years or so, we have FDA approved brain scans to look for the Alzheimer's plaque. These are called PET scans, PET, right? The PET scans. And PET scans normally are done for cancer evaluation to stage cancer, but we have developed a specialized PET scan where a medication is injected into you, and that medication goes up to the brain, looks for the Alzheimer's plaque, and if it's there, the medication binds to it, and then it lights it up on a PET scan. Makes sense? Makes sense so far? These PET scans are now available. Unfortunately, most docs are not getting PET scans paid for by insurance. And that's been the biggest thing. MRI does not find, it's not the type of test to look for the plaque, right? An MRI will look for at your brain structure and different things, but an MRI is not designed to find the Alzheimer's plaque. A PET scan is designed to find it. A PET scan is very expensive, Linda, thousands of dollars. with that. Okay. You can get PET scans if you are part of many, Alzheimer's clinical trials. Many of these clinical trials offer PET scans. I know we do in Long Beach, where we do clinical trials for that, right? And that's included as part of the clinical trial at no cost. But outside of that, it's hard to get a PET scan because most insurance currently isn't paying for it. So that's the problem. Terry says our insurance paid for the PET scan as part of the evaluation for Leqembi. Great. Yes. Medicare last year did state that they will start to pay for PET scans. Medicare did mention it last year as part of the Leqembi evaluation. Okay. So that's one way to find out if you have the plaque. The other way is through a lumbar puncture. The other way is through a lumbar puncture where we stick a little needle in your spine, pull out some fluid called CSF fluid, right? The cerebral spinal fluid, where we can look for the amyloid that way. Not a popular test, guys. Even patients with Alzheimer's don't want a lumbar puncture. So it's not really being done often or consistently. Now, in the last few years, as we have advanced science, and the technology to detect plaque. In the last few years, we now have a fairly accurate blood test. And yes, I did say blood tests to look for the Alzheimer's plaque. There are actually several blood tests out there to evaluate Alzheimer's plaque. The leading candidate today, as I'm speaking today, it may change next year, but the leading candidate today is a blood test called the p-tau 217. Okay, I'll type it down for you guys. p-tau 217. There you go. Do you see it? It's in the chat group. I just typed it. p-tau 217. Its accuracy rate is above 90% as far as being able to correlate with the blood test and what's in the brain. Okay, it's not 100% accurate, but it's getting there. It's good. So let me ask you this: what's the good news and the bad news with the blood test? Anyone know? What is the good news and the bad news with the blood test? With that. And Lynn says, I got the tau blood test through a clinical trial, okay, good, Lynn. So the good news is the blood test is cheaper than a PET scan, that's for sure. Lynn says, does it prove that it's in the brain? It's accurate about around 90%, Lynn. It's not 100%. So the good news is that the blood test is less invasive. It's going to be less expensive. The bad news is that insurance is not covering it. It's not covered, Sherry. That's the unfortunate news, right? At least it's not covered yet. But that's the latest on early detection, where you can find out if you got this. But let me tell you this. I'm the first one to tell you that even if you have a blood test that shows that you have the Alzheimer's protein, right, the p-tau protein, it does not mean that you have the diagnosis of Alzheimer's. Does that make sense? I don't want anyone to panic. Just because you have a blood test saying that you have the Alzheimer's protein, it does not mean that you have the diagnosis of Alzheimer's. Does that make sense to you guys? Why is that? It's that because we can detect the blood test while your memory is still perfect, right? You can have a positive blood test while your memory is still perfect. It does not mean that you have the diagnosis of Alzheimer's. It does mean that you should take some action with that. But here are some other things, some things you should think about, though, when we talk about getting a blood test for Alzheimer's disease. And there are several issues that still needs to be resolved, in my mind, before this goes commercial and everyone is doing a blood test. The question you should think about is, what are you going to do with the results if it's positive? Okay. Number one, what are you going to do with the results? Number two is this going to affect life insurance? Is this going to affect, long-term care insurance? What does it mean if this blood test, and if it's positive, if it's in your medical record? What does this mean? right? You got to think about those things before we legitimately offer this to, everyone to check. Because I don't know the answer, guys. I don't know the answer. All I can say is that there's a blood test that's being developed where we can catch, hopefully, the protein that's associated with Alzheimer's early while you still have good memory. Makes sense? The technology is now available, but we have to think about what does this mean when it's in your medical record. I think we have to sort all the ethical issues out, all the social issues out, and things of that sort. Okay. Lynn Duncan says through clinical trial screening, not on your record. Yes, that's accurate with that. So Patricia says it'll give time to make plans. Yes. Yes. By the way, if there is a blood test, how many of you guys actually want to take that blood test? I'm curious. How many of you guys actually want to know? How many of you guys actually want to know? I'm curious. Holy moly. I see some yeses, I see some nos. I mean, if you knew that you're at risk for Alzheimer's, right? If you knew that you're at risk for Alzheimer's, what will you do about it? What are you going to do about it? Okay, what are you going to do about it if you knew you're at risk for Alzheimer's? Early detection. Well, I think this is the whole purpose of having early detection, right? How do you prepare? Well, some folks will go and have a ton of vacations. Some folks will go and make sure that their living trust is all set up. Some folks want to make financial decisions, right? Some of us may want to look at our will. Whose name do you want to cross out, right? Or add in. Prepare for your care, update your trust. Absolutely. Some folks may want to be part of a clinical trial, right? We've done clinical trials on Leqembi, on donanemab, and all that. Hazel says she's going to do her bucket list faster. It's not fast enough right now, Hazel. Is that right? Right. And so the first thing I can tell you is that there are many things that you can do to help with the brain without taking a pill. Okay. There are many things you can do to help with the brain without taking a pill. Did you know in a study that was published last year where 70-something thousand participants were being followed and evaluated, right? It was a study, this was an observational study. And each one of these participants was wearing like an iWatch or a Fitbit where they were able to measure the number of steps they did every day, right? They were able to measure the number of steps they did every day. And these participants were followed for about 7 or 8 years. This was out in England. And after 7, 8 years or so, the researchers were able to see how many steps people took a day, right? Some people walked a lot, 10,000 steps a day. Some people barely walked, right? They walked maybe 1 or 2,000 steps a day. The researchers looked at the data and they looked to see how many new folks developed the diagnosis of Alzheimer's in these 70-something thousand participants. How many folks develop a new diagnosis of Alzheimer's after 7 or 8 years? And they found several hundred folks in this big group develop a new diagnosis of Alzheimer's. So they were able to see the number of steps they did. So those who walked 9 to 10,000 steps a day compared to those who hardly walked, right? Those who walked 9 to 10,000 steps a day, they lowered the risk for Alzheimer's in half by about 50%. Walking does not require a pill, does it? And if you're like me where, I'm going to walk 10,000 steps a day, that's like 5 miles. That's a lot of walking, right? If you're like me and you can walk maybe 4,000 steps a day, if you're able to walk in this big group that they looked at, 70-something thousand folks, those who walk 4,000 steps a day were still able to lower the risk of Alzheimer's by 25%. By 25%, guys, by simply walking. Right? So we know exercise improves and reduces the risk of Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. We know that brain exercises, those who actively use their brain on a regular basis have a lower risk of Alzheimer's than those who, sit at home all day, not using their brains. We know that those who socialize and are active in the community and are spending times with friends and family have a lower risk of Alzheimer's than those who don't socialize and are home alone all day. We know that those who get enough sleep, who sleep well, have a lower risk of Alzheimer's than those who don't sleep well. How much sleep should you get? We recommend at least 7, 8 hours a day, right? At a minimum. Because when you're sleeping, guys, is when the brain is removing Alzheimer's plaque. Okay, during the deep stage of sleep, right? The sleep has a sleep cycle where you go from like being awake to like light sleep, deep sleep, and then REM sleep, right? Being awake, light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep. During the deep sleep stage is when Alzheimer's plaque is being removed from the brain. Okay, which is why that those who don't sleep well chronically long term have a higher risk of Alzheimer's, because when you're not sleeping, what's not being removed? Right? Plaque's not being removed. We know that those who have hearing loss have a higher risk of Alzheimer's than those who don't have hearing loss. Okay. And so this is an easy fix with hearing loss, guys. It's called a hearing aid. But how many of us go out and get, yearly hearing evaluations from our doctor? And how many of us, rather than getting a hearing aid, we turn up the TV? Right? How much deep sleep do you need per night? Terry, try to get 8 hours sleep, and it should include the deep sleep as well, right? Why hearing loss? Why is hearing loss a risk factor? Hearing loss is a risk factor because our brain needs to be stimulated. Think of the brain as a muscle, use it or lose it, right? How do we stimulate our brain? Through the 5 senses: what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, what we touch, right? Brain stimulation, which is why doing brain games and taking classes and activating your brain, it's like exercising the muscle, right? When you can't hear, you're losing an entire portal of brain stimulation. You're not stimulating your brain anymore. That's why it's use it or lose it, right? And that's why it's a risk factor for Alzheimer's. So hearing loss is a risk factor. We know that those who have high blood pressure, uncontrolled, are at higher risk for Alzheimer's. Those who have high cholesterol are at higher risk for Alzheimer's. Those who have diabetes have doubled the risk of Alzheimer's than a non-diabetic, right? Diabetes have doubled the risk of Alzheimer's than a non-diabetic because sugar is toxic to your brain, right? Sugar is toxic to your brain. Debbie says the CPAP help. Yes, Debbie, when you those who have obstructive sleep apnea is very undiagnosed, guys, underdiagnosed. Those who have sleep apnea, they don't get enough oxygen to their brain. So it is a risk factor for Alzheimer's. So if you use a CPAP, absolutely, that makes a difference, right? Susie says, my husband refuses to wear a hearing aid. Susie, you don't know how many wives have brought in their husbands to me saying he's not listening to me, right? So yeah, it could be hearing loss or it could be selective hearing loss sometimes with that. Okay.
Dr. Trin, I
Yes.
just wanted to share, we do have some other questions in the Q&A box. So I just wanted to share those with you because
Perfect.
so some people also wrote, they wanted to ask your opinion on effectiveness of Leqembi and also if there is a drug trial that deals with both amyloid plaques and tau.
Absolutely. Yes, we got like a little bit of less than 15 minutes left. I also see a question, can we ask our primary doctor for memory test? Yes, you should ask your primary care doctor for a memory test. The memory test is part of the annual wellness visit often. If you're getting an annual wellness visit, often it's embedded in there. Your doctor just needs to know what to do with the results, right? If it's abnormal, they should do something about it rather than saying it's because you're older. Now, let's talk about Leqembi really quick. Okay, in the time we have left. I can send you guys an ebook if you like. I'll send it to Alzheimer's Los Angeles and they can send you an ebook that has a lot of information since our time is short. Sounds good? Leqembi is FDA approved. Leqembi is FDA approved last year. It is the first medication that is FDA approved to remove the Alzheimer's plaque. Okay, you guys get it? First medication FDA approved in the history of Alzheimer's to remove the Alzheimer's plaque. So Leqembi is an IV infusion. It is an IV infusion, and it's given twice a month, every 2 weeks. Folks come in, they get an infusion. And what the medication is that it is an antibody. So antibodies is made by our immune system, designed to fight, viruses and bacteria and infections and things of that sort. Okay. So Leqembi is an antibody that is made by Eisai Pharma and Biogen. And what the antibody does is that it binds to the protofibrils. The protofibrils is like 2 steps before the plaque is actually even made, right? The plaque's over here, you count back 2 steps, and you have the protofibrils, and it binds to the protofibrils. And as it binds to the protofibrils, it alerts your immune system to go up there to clear the protofibril and also clear the plaque as a result downstream. Does that make sense to you guys so far? How the mechanism, how the Leqembi works? It binds up here to the protofibrils, and it alerts your immune system to go up there to clear the protofibril. And as it does that, it clears the plaque downstream. So let me tell you what Leqembi can do and cannot do. So in Alzheimer's, over time, our memory kind of goes down like this, right? Our memory goes down like this over time. And part of the reason is because we're losing brain cells, okay? Did you know that in Alzheimer's disease and dementia in general, the size of your brain shrinks over time? It gets smaller and smaller. And the reason for that is brain cells are dying, they're going away, okay? That's why your brain size shrinks. And what we cannot do, guys, is this. The medications we have, as brain cells are going down, as memory is going down with the brain cells, we cannot do this to your memory. It doesn't do this. It does not reverse memory loss that has been lost. Does that make sense? It does not reverse memory loss that has been lost. It's because those brain cells are gone, right? We're not bringing back dead brain cells. So what we hope to do is we hope to do this. We hope to slow down and to stabilize the rate of memory loss. Makes sense? We hope to slow down and stabilize the rate of memory loss. And the important thing is this: the earlier you detect the problem, the better it is, right? The earlier you detect the problem, the better it is to start treatment, the better it is to be proactive with all the lifestyle stuff that I talked about. This is why this is such an important conference, right? Early memory loss, because you want to catch things early. So Leqembi in our studies that's published in the phase 3 data is able to slow down memory loss by 27% compared to the placebo group, the group that didn't get treatment, okay? So that's after about 1.5 years, about 18 months, when they looked at the data, those who got treatment, those who didn't get treatment in the placebo group. Those who got treatment, they were able to slow down their memory loss by about 27%. Okay. Now, Leqembi and any other medication similar to Leqembi, it could be donanemab, it could be any anti-amyloid therapy, right? Where an antibody is attached to the plaque and the tau and things of that sort. They all have the same class of side effects. And the class of side effects, there's 2 things you should be aware as far as side effects. You could have, and this is in not the majority of patients, this is the minority of patients. The 2 things you should be aware of is swelling, right? Swelling in the brain, and microscopic hemorrhage, which is spots of bleeding. It's not a stroke, right? We call it microscopic hemorrhage. Those are the 2 potential side effects of this class of medication, not just Leqembi alone, but in any anti-amyloid removing, therapy, monoclonal antibodies, we call it. So it does have potential significant side effects. You have to weigh the risk versus the benefit of treatment when it comes to Leqembi. But what I can tell you is that early detection, guys, is much better than late detection in any of the treatments. Are you guys is everyone pretty much with me so far with that? I want to make sure that you guys are understanding what Leqembi can do, what it cannot do, and things of that sort. Okay. Earlier detection, the better. Now, Leqembi and donanemab and the anti-amyloid therapies that are being evaluated now, it's indicated in just two categories of memory issues: mild Alzheimer's disease. Is not indicated for moderate or severe Alzheimer's disease, and is also indicated in the pre-Alzheimer's disease state called MCI, mild cognitive impairment. Most of you guys know MCI. So those are the two stage, right, of treat where Leqembi is indicated. If you miss that and you're over here at the moderate stage of Alzheimer's, it's no longer an indication to use Leqembi with that. Okay. Cheryl says, can't tell if you are in favor of the drugs. Cheryl, I am in favor of the fact that your food should be your medicine. Does that make sense? Your lifestyle should be your medicine. And if needed, add the medications. Okay? It's not one or the other. The side effects of these anti-amyloid removing medication is potential bleeding and swelling of the brain. Okay? Potential bleeding and swelling of the brain. Linda says, can I talk a little bit about prevention, best diet? The best diet, guys, in the time we have left, like 5 minutes, right? The best diet is the Mediterranean diet, plant-based. What is the Mediterranean diet? It is, green leafy vegetables, vegetables in general, nuts, berries, um, and olive oil and fish. What is not in the Mediterranean diet is red meat. Okay. I'm not saying don't eat red meat, but I'm saying it's not part of a brain health diet, if you know what I mean. All right. What else have we got in here in the few minutes? Light sound therapy at 40 hertz. Christine is asking about other treatments. There is a study going on, Christine, right now from a company called Cognito that is checking out light therapy at 40 hertz in clinical trials for Alzheimer's disease. If you guys wanted to chat with me, feel free to shoot me an email or contact my office. It's easy to find me on the internet. It's just healthybrainclinic.com in Long Beach with that. How can you get into these clinical trials? There's lots of clinical trials going on, UCLA, USC. We do clinical trials, obviously, in Long Beach and things of that sort. There's a lot of folks who would like my ebook. I guess I'll just email it to Al's LA here and they can share it with you. Sounds good?
We have it for you. So we have it in part of Dr. Trin's resources. He was kind enough to share that as well as his sleep resources. So we'll make sure to get that out to everybody. Oop.
Yeah. I mean, there's never enough time to finish our conversation, which is why I do these 3-hour lectures at churches. But if you got a group that you want me to go talk to, I will be glad to do that, guys. It's just part of my work and part of my ministry. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Trin. Sorry, I can't see you, but thank you so much for being here today. And you're such a wealth of information. And again, you take the time to clearly explain things for us. As I said, Dr. Trin does so many speaking engagements. So we'll be sure to let you all know where he'll be. Here's our contact information for all of our speakers today, as well as Yamar and ourselves as care counselors. Please reach out to us with any questions, and anything that was shared here will be sure to get you connected to. And also there will be a recording. It'll give us a couple of days. It'll be on our website, and we could also email that out directly to you if you're having difficulty finding it. Not a problem. Again, you guys are all so amazing to be here on a Saturday, and we're just so thankful to all our speakers in sharing their wealth of information and specialty. Thank you all so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And as Dr. Trin said, the best medicine is to walk, to be connected with loved ones, to eat healthy food, leafy greens. So be kind to yourself, to your body, to your mind, and each other. Thank you all for your time.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.